Okay, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines will remain off. Go for it.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for July 9th, 2024. It's a work session this evening. We'll get into it right away. We have a first item on our work session is a secret scoping discussion. The applicant is 117 BBA LLC at 117 Bayview Avenue in Amagansett, Suffolk, tax map number 300-84-1-3.1. The notice of availability of draft scope as required. The lead agency anticipates making substantial changes before issuing its final scope and public scoping session. All public comments must be received by July 2nd, 2024. That is passed, and the hearing and the record is now closed. Time, the size and location is 20,223 square feet of 117 Bayview Avenue, Hollymere, Section A, lots 40 through 52 in Amagansett. The description is to demolish an existing 1- and 2-story residence and sanitary system and construct a 1,885 square foot 2-story residence with approximately 1,172 square feet of decking, 1,216 square feet of pavers, a sanitary system, a driveway to construct roughly 108 linear feet of rock revetment, erosion control structure on a parcel of land containing tidal and freshwater wetlands, beaches, and surface waters. Relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 and variances from 255-385 Coastal Erosion Overlay District Regulations, 255-440 minimum wetland setbacks, 255-1172 pyramid setbacks, 255-1110 Table 3 of the Town Code, and any other relief necessary. The following 8 variances are also required for this application. The variance is required to construct a coastal erosion structure where the construction of a new erosion control structure is prohibited. 2 and 3 variances of 70.6 feet and 82.1 feet are required to construct a residence and decking 29.4 feet, 17.9 feet respectively from wetlands where a 100-foot setback is required. A 96-foot variance is required to install a sanitary system 54 foot from wetlands where a 150-foot setback is required. 5 and 6 variances of 6 foot and 1.75 are required to allow the residence to exceed the relative height limitation from the western and southern lot lines, respectively. 7, a 3.5 foot variance is required to allow the residence to extend at 28.5 feet above natural grade as identified by the applicant, where 25 foot is the maximum permitted for a flat roof structure. 8, an estimated 1-foot variance is required to allow the deck to be constructed 14 feet from western rear yard lot line where 15-foot setback is required, and 9, a 98-foot variance is required to construct the PVC retaining wall as close as 2 foot from wetlands where a 100-foot setback is required. The meeting is to consider public comments on the applicant's 5/22/24 draft scope of the draft environmental impact statement required by the positive declaration issued for the above project issued by the ZBA and on 5/2/24. All comments must be received by 7/2/24. And again, that has now passed and the record is closed. Tonight's session is a work session to work on a proposed final work scope scoping document. Recognizing that the applicant has prepared a draft work scope, we have received comments and recommendations from the town planning department, recommendations to that draft scope. And we as zoning board were to consider all the evidence before us. Some of that evidence is related to public comment that we have had. We have had many public comments. We've recently received, prior to July 2nd, a letter from, let me pull it up. from the New York State Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, which is the landowner to the west. Most of the public comments that we've received to date are primarily related to the properties to the east, related to access and whatnot. And so what I'd like to do at this point is just take a minute and read into the record for a public process, because the Parks Department hasn't been before us in their public comment. So I'd like to take a minute and just read their letter into the record, even though it is part of the record. This is for public access.
I hate to know, but I'm having trouble hearing. I wonder if you.
You say can
Is that better?
Yes.
There you go. Sorry. So this is a letter from the New York State Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, OPRHP, is writing regarding the draft scope for the above referenced project, for which the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals is acting as lead agency under SECRA. OPRHP appreciates the opportunity to provide comments as an interested agency. As you know, the project location is adjacent to the northeastern end of Napeague State Park, formerly known as Promised Land. OPRHP concurs with the June 21st, 2024 recommendations provided by the Town Planning Board, especially regarding basic format and depth of detail of the draft environmental impact statement. Short and long-term impacts are possible along the beach and to numerous habitats within Napeague State Park. OPRHP requests that the environmental setting section include the environmental and cultural history and present day conditions of the ecosystem of Promised Land, specifically the area west of the project site to the former fish factory buildings and south to Lazy Point Road. OPRHP requests that relevant species and significant natural communities tracked by the New York Natural Heritage Program and New York State Department of Environmental Conservation species of greatest conservation need to be identified in the DEIS environmental setting section. OPRHP requests that the species, habitat, and ecosystem functions of the northeastern end of the Napeague State Park, as described above, be included while considering all potential impacts. Passive recreation within Napeague State Park includes fishing, hunting, hiking, birdwatching, dog walking, and wildlife photography. The DEIS environmental section should include a description of this public recreation in Napeague State Park. OPRHP requests that impacts to public recreation be included in the DEIS land use and zoning section. Long-term and cumulative impacts on public use of Napeague State Park may occur following completion of the promise action and should be considered throughout the DEIS. OPRHP includes climate change as a key consideration in all agency actions. As such, OPRHP requests that the DEIS explicitly consider the effects of climate change, such as sea level rise and increased storm frequency and intensity, on the potential for impacts on the public resources of Napeague State Park from the proposed action. If further surveys and other data collection at Napeague State Park are necessary to satisfy the town's recommendation, the applicant should request a permit from OPRHP's Long Island region before undertaking field work within Napeague State Park. In closing, OPRHP indicates the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals considering these comments and recommendations as you progress in the review process. If you have any questions or need clarification, please do not hesitate to contact Nicole Garofalo. Along with some of the public comments, and we've had written responses from Eric Bregman, dated June 24th, 24. We've also had written public comments, and Eric Bregman as well has done, he's been here as verbalizing public comment, as well as Joe Karpinski. We have a written document from him too. So all these board members are to be considered in tonight's discussions. So with that, we're going to utilize the draft scope as prepared by the applicant, and work through that. I think we should, I recommend we compare that. We have a recommendation from the planning department, Brian Frank, who is with us this evening if we have any questions on his part of it. And just a point of order is to limit your questions to the record, and questions of clarification to his draft scope, recommendation. Any questions?
No.
So in the, let me just take a second and pull up my documents.
Is this the revised draft? Exhibit
We were
B?
going off the revised draft.
Exhibit B.
It's A.
There's a date, it's not, I don't know if it's date, 7/2/24.
But it's,
But it's the
A and B
updated.
are the same, it's just that B was,
So B was the
Redlined.
updated.
7/4/24, is that it?
oh, A.
A and B.
Do you have a copy of it? A copy of it, we'll share a copy of it now.
This?
The draft of 7/4.
What-
You have the 7/4 one
This is
available?
the July 2nd received.
Yeah, that's the July 2nd, so I'm on the right one.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. So as part of the draft scope, let me just, again, pull up the recommendations. All right, first is the proposed action. We have 117 BBA LLC revetment and residential redevelopment compared to, I think that's pretty much in line with what Brian Frank was,
Mhm.
the cover sheet. Location of the project, secret classification, lead agency, zoning board of appeals, applicant, 117 BBA LLC, DEIS prepared by Matthews, Curse, Cooley, and Sharon, PLLC. And in there, they have a scoping session by lead agency. That would be, I would think, tonight's date. Correct?
Well, we had the public session
public
on the
session.
25th.
Oh, the
so
scoping session that was a public session. Is that what it was referring to?
Maybe we need both.
Public,
dates.
okay. There's, oh, okay, so that's fine. And then,
I think that,
Brian said, the planning department suggests that the contact person be listed as Brian Frank to include name and addresses of preparers of any portion of the statement and contact name and phone number. The date of acceptance of the DEIS by the lead agency, and the date of public hearing and the public period established for submitting written comments to the lead agency and where they can be submitted. Board members, do you have a comment on whether they should be included or not?
So that, I'm sorry, I couldn't,
I think it's good, so we have a chronology of the dates that these things happened. The date we accepted it, which was, I think we received it 5/22/24.
Yep. The recommendations then move to,
Sorry, Chair, can you speak even closer into the microphone? Everyone's gesturing, but I'm having trouble hearing you too.
sorry, people. Let me pull this closer. Yeah. Is that better? What's that?
Teresa, she didn't say much.
Okay. All right, so
No,
make sure we
I
speak up.
just suggested that
Okay,
we
so we're
do
good? You
include the
can hear
date
now?
that we received the original draft EIS in the scope. Okay. Is that better? Okay, okay.
Under the cover, Brian Frank is recommending that there are additional requirements, i.e. table of contents, followed by list of tables and figures, description of proposed action, environmental setting and impact analysis, mitigation measures, proposed alternatives considered, adverse environmental impacts that cannot be avoided if the project is implemented. H is reasonably related short-term and long-term impacts, cumulative impacts, and other associated environmental impacts, and any irreversible or irretrievable commitments of environmental resources that would be associated with the proposed action should it be implemented. Other considerations, references, appendix. Board members, what's your opinion on adding this as far as those items into this part of the
I think they come later in the draft.
scoping session? Excuse me?
I think those things come later in the applicant's.
Well, this is part of the
draft, so,
table, this is kind of like the
Table of contents.
table of contents.
uh,
He moves into the draft scope outline, which we're going to get into. My understanding is that Brian's format is following the format of the draft scope.
So we're looking.
Brian, is that correct?
What page are you on? Page 1.
To what extent?
Well, we have in your recommendations,
this is the,
we have beyond item number 5, 6, and 7. You have items B through K. I think the question was from Member Mehring is whether they come later. I think your intention was to have it follow.
Well,
Cover
Brian
sheet.
Frank, East Hampton Planning Department. I don't know if I
Go ahead,
need to be
Brian.
sworn in or anything. But 1 through 5 of the 1 through 7 are the items that are in the required on the cover sheet.
Hold on a minute. Ms. Matthews, you have a comment? Oh, okay, you're listening. All right, sorry. All right, go ahead, Brian.
The table of content is something similar. The description of the proposed act, this is a summary in the beginning.
Right,
And then
this
as
is
you
the
see, when you
beginning
get into
summary.
the outline again, you'll see a little bit more detail under all of those
Thank you.
headings and what should be covered. If I presented that a little bit vaguely in the recommendations for the draft scope, my apologies.
No, so I mean, I think the point is that this is more of an outline that is of a table of contents.
These are the upper part of Roman numeral 1 is a summary of what would be contained in
That's correct.
the environmental impact statement. Roman numeral 2 is an outline for the scope with a little bit more detail about what each of those items B through at least I would include.
Okay, great. Understood?
yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't know if this is the time to get to this, because the way you've broken it down, suggested to have it broken down, you have like D is environmental setting and impact analysis, and then E is mitigation measures proposed. And then I noticed in Mr. Matthews, the sort of frontispiece to the revised draft, he seems to make the case that, and I think I get this right, that breaking out impact and mitigation, potential and mitigation for each of the different topics, I think his preference is to kind of lump those together in a separate chapter on all mitigation and all impacts, as opposed to doing them each one related to the topic that's being discussed. I'm not saying this right. I think you know what I'm saying. But so I would prefer to see the mitigation, each mitigation related to whatever topic, and same thing with the impacts, as opposed to lumping them together.
Ideally, the content of a draft impact statement should correlate directly with the scope that's adopted by the lead agency.
Right.
So by breaking the impact and the mitigation down into the individual sections to which they apply to, it's the intent that that information might be easier to identify, that there is a consistent format throughout the document as these resources are identified, potential impacts are identified, mitigations and alternatives are considered, that there's a pattern to each one. And I'm not suggesting it's anybody's intention to jumble anything together, but by sorting it out this way, it will hopefully make it harder for that to happen, and a little bit easier to make sure that the content of the impact statement correlates directly with the information that was requested in the scope. That's why it's broken down into those individual, that repetitive pattern for each of those categories.
I think that I was trying to say that would be my preferred structure to see overall, but that's just wanted to put that on the table.
Okay, so on the draft work scope, thank you, Brian. The draft work scope identifies the introduction and description of proposed action. And item number 2 is from the recommendation is a drafts of the draft scope outline, chapter 1, description of the proposed action. And the recommendation is that the proposed action should include items A, 1 through 3, items B, C, D, and E. Board members, have you reviewed this? And I don't know if we need to go through every line item on this, but I'm assuming that we've all gone through it. Is there anything that you recommend be included, or do we, in a sense, what's your recommendation as far as are we looking to include a deeper scope than the draft scope identifies?
I'm on page 4 of the Mr. Matthews document, so that I'm at the A, project purpose, needs and benefits, background and history of parcel. And I guess it talks about the history of the parcel status, and understand this. I think there was a public comment, it might have been included in Mr. Karpinski's comment about a broader history of the parcel, the area. I know he talked about going back 5,000 years. I'm not necessarily, unless you want to dig in, but so I just wanted to try and reconcile that it's history of the parcel or also history of the broader area. I don't know.
I agree, and I think that was also brought up in the Parks Department
was.
as far as
Right.
broadening the thing, and I think,
I have a question about that.
sure.
Because just so we have clarity about what you're agreeing with, what you're bringing up and what you're agreeing with, because it seemed a little bit unclear to me. When you say a broader, so here you're on page 4 of our revised one, right? Background and history of the parcel. That's what we're looking at?
Yeah.
Section 3A1, right? So include the history of the parcel status with the town, including permit applications, et cetera, et cetera. When you're saying a broader history of the area, what, I'm not sure, do you mean permitting history of the neighboring properties, or what broader scope are we talking about?
I think, first off, we might look at the specifics that are identified in the Parks letter. I think when we get into it, I think there's some history from Mr. Karpinski, and Ms. Maring, you can sort of explain what you're looking for. But He also had, I think, as far as identifying the UR considerations, urban renewal considerations,
Okay.
and that goes. And easements, road widening easements.
Okay.
In his document, he was attaching, I think, that the town map, the DEC critical and regulatory graphs, the collage of the aerials, which was included in his document. In 1954-69, before the geocubes and after the geocubes. And then a 3-page memo from Aram to Kunian that he included. Did he include that in it? I believe he did, in his document.
Well, that's going to be that. I mean, we're laying out the scope that's going to be required in the DEIS. It's up to the applicant in answering that DEIS. So we're laying out what we're looking for, right? And that's what I think is what our goal tonight is. It's not to add specificity to exactly what we're looking for. You're going to have to, that's part of, we're going to help try to define that.
That's what I was looking
and
for
I get
there.
that. I get that.
It'll shorten the time on the back end of DEIS review if we know for instance, that question, what you were looking for versus writing a DIS,
Right.
submitting it, getting reviewed, and then getting that answer.
My viewpoint, I'm specifically looking at these two documents as a recommendation to yours and from there, and then I think, board members, if you want to, we can go then into some other concerns if we think that this, and it's good to bring that stuff up as far as the Joe Karpinski concerns or the
Because it was a
parks
public comment,
concerns
right, yeah.
at that time.
Yeah.
Well, that's included in, if you look in here.
It's included, Brian, I think he includes it. He includes it.
The secret regs and everything else requires that you address public
Correct.
comments and neighbor comments, et cetera, so that'll be in there.
So everything in those documents you already have and you'll address.
But before we get to part two,
Where are you, part two? Oh,
part one is the cover sheet.
Are you working off the same documents?
Yeah,
That's
I'm
where I'm
looking-
getting confused.
yeah,
I think Ms. Maring's reading from the revised, correct me if I'm wrong, from the revised scope that we submitted on the second following the public comments and following review here. Mr. Chairman, I think you're reading from the planning department's scope. I don't think we're all looking at the same thing.
No, I'm looking at both at the same time.
Okay.
what I read
So
was.
it was just
I'm
a little
looking at your
confusing.
Exhibit B
Oh,
that you have
I'm looking at
attached.
A. I mean, B is the same.
One
it's
was,
just red line.
one was just redlined,
Right, yeah.
one was clean copy, yeah. Okay, it was a little confusing.
What I'm looking at is, for instance, Brian takes part one, your part one, and expands it. And I'm asking the board, are we going to expand it as the recommendation to the planning department? And same thing, we're going to move on to part two. Are we expanding it to include the additional information as a part of the recommendation of the planning department? So that's
And you'll see
the way
that-
I'm looking at comparing these two
You either
documents.
have seen, you will see, if you go through it, it's substantially all there. We included, added in a number of things that they wanted and what have you.
Okay.
A couple of things that we didn't, we
Right.
put in our cover letter why. Because, for instance, I'm just talking about the environmental setting that we're talking about, and Brian's discussion about, maybe it's better to talk about, you're talking about the setting, and we're talking about there's dunes and wetlands, for instance, right? When you're talking about the setting, to then go to impacts and mitigation, you want to have impacts on wetlands and mitigation about that thoroughly vetted, I understand, but we put it in, in both of these documents, there are segregated sections for mitigation, impacts, and impacts that can't be mitigated. So
agree.
all of that would get.
We
in
agree.
there.
I'm suggesting that the format of Brian's recommendations follows your format. And I'm just suggesting that we go format to format, item by, not item by item necessarily, but group by group.
Yeah.
Part one, part two, part three. That's what I'm looking at. Before we go on to part two, let's finalize part one and then move on. Does that make sense? Right. Everybody have a problem with that? Everything good?
Yeah.
So,
I just don't know what you mean by part. I'm looking at chapters
Brian's
and,
document, you're looking at this document, right? Okay, first, okay.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I'm
it's this
looking
one, June
at. So
21st.
what's part
One.
one?
Yeah. So where are you on?
I'm on his,
What page?
I thought we finished up Brian's, part one relative to the
Oh, the cover,
draft scope of part one,
The cover sheet.
right?
that
The
was,
cover sheet. So
Right.
part one,
Yeah, we got that,
are we saying that it's
No.
going to include, we're including everything from A through K? Whereas the draft scope deals with A through E. Understand?
G is included.
Excuse me?
What he has as G is also included.
Okay. I don't want to duplicate things, of course, right? So, and I think we'll have to watch out for that when we get our final draft, right? Draft the EIS.
And H is, and we put in our cover letter, H is there as well. It's almost like a restatement of things that are already there, so it's there in our draft scope, even if it's not listed as.
Okay. In terms of outline, we'll just make sure. Okay, everybody on the same page? Are we okay with that?
I am.
Yeah,
So now we're going to move on to
two.
part two, draft scope outline.
Mhm.
That brings us to
the issue is like they're just numbered differently and
they are numbered, so we might have to renumber things,
oh, you want to, okay.
right? So what we have then is Brian, let's see, part two on the draft is table of comments and summary. But we've covered that already.
Two.
We've covered that
Number
in
two.
part one. So we're going to say
Okay, I think there's a number mismatch somehow here.
Well,
I mean, number two in the Exhibit B, is table of contents and summary, followed by a list of tables. The part two in Brian's document on page two is draft scope outline.
draft scope, that's correct. So,
Three for ours. That's where those.
That's, yours is Roman numeral 3. Right.
yeah.
right, so Mr. Matthews has number 3 description of the project. Brian has chapter 1 description of the proposed action.
It's defined as project proposed action.
Yeah.
That's how it's defined
Brian's
in there,
list.
so that's where they'll follow.
Oh, Brian, right?
Yeah, no, that's where I was looking before when I asked the question.
Just the numbering.
It's the numbering,
That's all.
right. But in our draft scope outline, all right,
Okay.
you want to go through this by letter? So you want to say we have project purpose, needs and benefits? We can go to Brian's letter A and compare the two.
Mhm.
Why don't we start there? Right?
Yes, sorry, I had jumped ahead before when I was asking the question.
Let's go
about
back
history,
and we'll
right?
start there and we'll go through item by section there. So we got the background and history of the parcel, objective of the applicant, needs and benefits of the projects. And that's similar to what Brian is requesting. Except he outlines A through D under item number 1.
Which I think are included. They're not broken out by letter, but they seem to be included under 1, background and history of the parcel.
Yeah, it's all in one paragraph. basically.
Right, just You didn't
Okay,
put letters.
right, thank you. Location of the project, physical location, school district, zoning district, overlay districts, flood zone, and Suffolk County tax map. It's included, it's similar,
Yes,
correct?
correct.
Yeah.
Item C, design and layout of the project, size of parcel, structures, discussion of history.
And here's where, if I may, one of the things I'd like to see more detailed, I feel there's been a failure to address the environmental issues, and we clearly have to identify in this scope the moderate to severe potential adverse impacts that have resulted from the installation or construction of the existing GOC wall. And also, there's a reasonable probability that these impacts will also occur after the installation of a permanent rock revetment. The installation of their revetment requires excavation below the water table and is in proximity to wetlands along the western property boundary. So I'd like to see that, those environmental issues addressed in more detail.
Is that covered, let me just, my question
Is
would
that
be, is
covered
that
anywhere
covered in
else?
Brian's recommendation? It seems to be.
And Brian Franks.
Yeah, and item number C.
Yeah.
So we're looking to expand item number C.
Yes,
What, design and layout of the proposed project?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, what do we know about the retaining wall? Is it, need a little bit more information about that.
Brian?
That's in, if you look at our C2C, specifically talks about the purpose, it addresses the narrative discussion in planning department's comments. It addresses the purpose of all the structures, including the PVC and the retaining walls. It's in there.
Well, right, but there's more specificity in Brian's suggestions, and it might be that you're intending to include that. But I think we're looking in the final to have it identified in specific terms. Is that right?
Is that correct?
It says to identify the purpose of the retaining wall. That's specifically in there, the purpose of the retaining wall.
I just may want to add some clarity. to
Yes, go ahead, John.
proceedings. John Ormantano, special counsel to the zoning board from Farrell Fritz. Tonight's purpose is really just to set the outline. We're not really drafting the impact statement. You're discussing what you'd like to have in the scope. We're going to listen, and as is planning staff, to draft the final scope, which will incorporate the comments here tonight. We don't necessarily need each point in chapter marked. We're getting
Right.
what the board wants, because from the basis of this discussion, we're going to be drafting the draft final scope for your review and approval.
Correct.
So that's the purpose of tonight. So I don't know if there needs to be the continual back and forth. I'm trying to streamline the process, understanding it's a public discussion, but you have the applicant's draft scope, you have planning department's recommendations, you have public comments. You're synthesizing this into what is going to be your final draft scope.
That's
And
correct.
What we're taking from tonight is what that is, and we may rearrange things also for clarity purposes. Some of the comments being stated about where impact should be discussed may not fit in the project design section, but we understand the concept is that it will be discussed. What are the impacts going to be? And that'll be outlined. Then the applicant's obligation is to address those in the impact statement, just so we have a clear understanding of how we are tonight, which I'm sure the board knows. I just feel like we're not going each page comparison. You're giving us your thoughts as to how you want it in detail so that we can then draft you.
Right, I think, yeah, and I would sense that. I think as far as laying out the outline is what we should be doing, and I think the discussion should be led to more of the specificity, if you will.
Correct. Yes, to the degree that you want it there, yes. You also may want to add in comments that were made by OPRHP, such as climate discussions. You don't have to find a place for it tonight, but the idea is that it will be discussed.
Right, my plan is to look at that after we go through this outline.
Yes.
Maybe go to theirs, maybe go to Joe Karpinski's and Mr. Bregman's, and public comment if there is any, if we have anything to add, and speak about that.
Right,
I don't
and
know
then-
where might not know where it goes. in
Correct.
this.
We're not drafting it. We're not writing it tonight.
That's
We're giving
correct.
us the discussion as to where, and then we'll synthesize it to the best that we can so that
Correct.
it flows. Correct.
Right, are
Thank
we
you.
okay with that?
Yep.
All right. So let's go, item C.
Before, we're on C,
I
right?
would like to see it more in the format that the planning department has requested, just to break it out in more specificity.
I agree.
Not that that's not the intent of the applicant, but
Can I ask for, on 2C2B, if I may, it asks for a current survey showing both the existing and proposed structures. I would like to request a survey that just shows separate the existing structures and then a survey that shows the proposed relative. I just think it's cleaner to be able to start with a survey that just has,
all in the application that's been filed, but we can include.
well, this is the DEIS. Yeah, just asking if it, because this is going to go to the public too. So, right, the DEIS will. Okay.
okay, item D, construction including erosion control structures and construction protocol. Seems pretty similar.
Mhm.
Okay with that. Item E,
On D2, where it says construction, materials, equipment, I don't know if we have to specify in soils, if you're gonna, keep soils on the property.
yeah, that would be part of their thing. Then we're gonna have to look at that.
Okay.
So, again, we're outlining what we're looking for.
I understand.
I don't know if we can cover every little aspect, but I think it's pretty comprehensive.
That one looks similar to me.
Item E is similar. We're okay with that?
D? E.
We go to geology.
Geology. Oh, I see it, right.
Anybody have any comments on, I mean, the extent of the recommendations is, again, more expounded in detail.
In bronze.
I think it's hard to compare the two, other than I don't want to, I think the applicant is including some of this, but I think, what's your idea? I think,
Well, I'd like to break out into B, terrestrial and aquatic ecology, broken out
What's
into
that?
I do like Brian Frank's format for the natural resources, broken out into vegetation, and fish, shellfish, and wildlife.
Now you're on, which one, what are you on?
She's on B.
B, terrestrial and aquatic ecology.
We didn't get past geology yet.
This is part of it. Oh, we didn't finish, I thought we did finish.
We're looking at geology scope. I would like the geology scope to, I think we should get, the impact on the geology is important, correct? We think the impact, and I think my feeling is any discovery or identification of existing conditions versus in should be identified in specificity again, right? And I think this should be, because the issue is whether or not there's a significant environmental impact. And I think we have to explore that, every option of that, or every part of it.
And I think there needs to be an assurance that when these structures are implemented, that they do not damage coastal resources or neighboring properties.
Right, and then there's a mitigation section on this as well. So board members, a suggestion, would a suggestion be to follow the format of the planning department?
I think it's more
yes.
detailed.
A, yes.
Geology, and the whole geology section, yeah.
Yeah,
And again, I
think
come
it's
back,
very-
this is what I was saying before, I think each of these sections should have the potential impacts and the mitigation
Absolutely.
broken out within them.
Now we can go on to B. Terrestrial and aquatic ecology. All right, so this is where I'm going to bring in, I think this is also comes in where we have the parks letter comes in detail. Where they go into quite a bit of detail about identifying wildlife and whatnot. We can come back to that later when we go through their document, but again, I think this is an important section that should be expounded on. Anybody have any comments, questions? Bless you.
Thank you.
I agree with that.
Land use and zoning, existing.
So I'm sorry, before we move on, B, are we saying also that we want it to reflect the planning department?
Yes,
Right, okay, good, thank you.
I think that's what
Okay,
we were
good.
talking
Just,
about.
I just wanted to, okay, sorry, land use and zoning.
Land use and zoning.
Before you go there, Mr. Chairman, that item, human resources, transportation, we'll discuss that when we maybe talk about Mr. Karpinski's letter.
Mm.
And Mr.
Yes.
Bregman, too.
Yeah.
So we're
You can make a note of
gonna
that.
wait with that, okay. Human resources. Zoning.
The draft scope identifies a lot of what is consistent in the planning department's recommendations regarding looking at the LWRP. I don't know if it is as extensive once again as well as the potential impacts. So what's your recommendation here, board members?
I think it should include the comp plan too,
There's CARP as well.
CARP and the comprehensive
Right.
plan, which
Yeah,
addresses
which
natural
address-
erosion protection features.
Are we in agreement with the planning department's assessment? And again, there's a mitigation section there.
Yes. Mitigate, where's the planning mitigation?
On Brian Frank's number 3.
I remember at the last session, there was a question about Mr. Matthews raised, should be consistency or compliance with.
A kind of a notation when you're talking about the LWRP, that's the wording used in that statute. It's more just consistency. That was just.
Right.
But once again, as far as an outline,
It's the
as
same
far as an outline, the LWRP has to be addressed.
It's every one of these that is listed in the.
We agree.
Department's one is listed in the.
Yeah, yeah.
scope.
Mhm.
Verbatim,
Yes,
every one.
Right, that's okay.
okay.
Item D, cultural resources, visual resources, community character. All right.
Community character.
On the land use, I'm sorry, before we move on, what is this where there would be discussion of the urban renewal issues?
I was, that's,
Yeah.
well, the question really is there a nexus between the UR regs and what's happening with this application?
Well, that's, again, that, if we think there might be, then we're going to include that in this, and
Right.
that becomes back as far as being answered in the DEIS.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay,
So I
we're
agree.
up to D, cultural.
We're on D.
Cultural resources.
Also cultural, I mean, as far as physical character, community, physical, identify historic use, existing conditions, I think is important. I think also, again, we're going to wrap into the parks letter too, where they raise concerns about that.
Yep.
Potential impacts, change along the beach, yes, I believe,
Yes, absolutely.
and mitigation.
Yes.
And again, we're not suggesting to, if the draft EIS is addressing these things, not to be duplicative, but to expand it in scope. Right?
Yes.
Yes, I agree with that.
We go on to significant environmental impacts.
Yes. Significant, okay.
It's similar, right? I mean, the word, the numbering, everything is starting to get out of line here. So instead of section 4 in the draft, Brian's suggestion, chapter 2. So I think I think it's similar to, I think.
Brian has it as 5, right?
Are we okay with the draft scope on number 5, on his number 5? It looks pretty
Yes.
consistent, and
Yeah,
I think
it
we're
is.
okay with
I
that.
think it's the same.
So the-
Mitigation measures.
Mitigation measures, yes.
Yes.
All right, here, an item A on this, the DEIS should identify the purpose of the fill cover and how the 70 cubic yards of sand was determined. It should also estimate the duration of fill cover. I think that if there is any discussion on the fill, there should be some discussion on how that is arrived at. So I would agree with that, right?
I would agree with that too.
Okay, I think chapter, adverse environmental impacts is similar.
No, there's, it can be done. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It appears the planning department is inserting a section between adverse environmental impacts
And other
and
considerations.
alternatives, and that's reasonably related short-term and long-term impacts, cumulative impacts, and other associated environmental impacts, and any irreversible or irretrievable commitments.
I think
of
that's
environmental
critical
resources.
information.
Agreed? We agree?
Yes.
Yes.
And other considerations or alternatives as is identified in the draft.
No, they're different. Other, chapter 7 in the Brian Frank's email is not, I don't see it included in the Matthews.
What's that?
I'm looking at chapter 7.
Chapter 5 has that.
Chapter 5
No, we
has
were
other
on
considerations.
adverse environmental effects.
Yeah, so Brian Frank's 7 relates to
Right, again,
chapter
we're-
5.
And 7.
Mm-hmm.
We just, you just,
We're started, so
Just a point for clarification, I think what you're suggesting is these are, the planning department staff has a different chapter than you.
That's
You are-
correct.
But you are creating the final scope, so it is whatever you say it's going to be.
we agree.
Right, so I just want to make sure we're clear for the record and for everyone.
And that's why I kind of eliminated, I started moving away and going to chapter like description rather than chapter number. So in other words,
Build it as you say it.
right. So if we look at chapter 5, for instance, adverse environmental effects, that would equal chapter 7 in the draft,
right.
number
So what
7.
is suggested here is that the urban renewal map it's another consideration, right? It doesn't exactly fit into a plan, but it is something to be considered, so it fits into.
That's
the
correct.
planning
Oh,
draft.
it fits into that alternatives. That's correct.
Actually fits into other considerations, right?
It does.
Right.
We brought that up before. That's correct.
Right, but I guess my question, Mr. Chair, was that you read what Brian Frank has as chapter 6, reasonably related, you read that paragraph, right? And noted that we want that to be included in the scope, and it's not currently included in what was submitted to us.
That's correct.
That's what you're saying, right?
In between those two
Right.
headings.
Right, and then I went ahead to chapter, what's listed, I'm not fussed about whether it's chapter or whatever, chapter 7, other considerations, which is laid out here. And I didn't see that in what was proposed.
I see.
So I was
That's been
asking
inserted, other
if that we should
considerations.
insert that as well.
That is also inserted, so I think you're right. I think,
Because that's all
That's correct.
before you get to alternatives.
I believe, and I think it's important for us to look at the urban renewal map considerations, members.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Going to get to that again.
Yep.
Mhm.
All right, now we get to alternatives. Alternative design and technologies. That's similar. It's okay. Under alternatives, which would be there, chapter 8.
Chapter 8 for.
Alternative sites. Same, right?
Yeah.
Alternative land use,
Yes.
same,
I think the applicant's document covers that.
yep,
It does.
yep. No action. Include an assessment. I'm okay with how the draft handles this one.
Which one? The,
Actually, it's a little bit more expounded.
I'm reading this no action alternative closely again, sorry.
Okay, I'm okay with their description of no action alternative.
Yeah, me too. That's actually very,
Yeah,
the applicant, yeah, very extensive.
I think largely the applicant has covered a lot of the
He's
areas.
covered everything.
that covers the outline, guys, I believe. So we go to the,
Except for references and appendices, nothing's there. So,
What about there was a point in Mr. Frank's memo under, it was D, alternative projects consistent with the natural resource permit standards.
under what heading?
I'm sorry, I'm in alternative still. In Brian Frank's memo, it's D. That's right, that's right.
Right.
and Frank's
And
memo?
that's not in here.
I missed that.
No, D is in
Where's D?
the submission from Brian Matthews.
Where?
I think Brian
Hey, you-
referenced that in his, and not in
And
this one.
Brian,
The applicant
I
did
think we
not.
did.
This is Brian Frank.
no, this is Brian Matthews, it's Exhibit B.
It does appear to be inserted.
Mhm.
We addressed that in our cover letter, that it's covered, NRSP alternatives, variance alternatives, they're all covered in the.
Right, I caught that in, right. Okay, so we have no problem with including this.
Sorry, with or with not?
With including it.
Shall we pull up the Parks letter?
How are we incorporating this item by item as a submittal? How are we doing this?
As a, I think as an involved agency, they are an involved agency, they're also a neighbor. I think that, I think we should pay particular attention to what they're asking for. And I think that the body of what they're asking for should be incorporated into
I'm asking, are we going to
Yes,
break
go.
it out item by item, or are we just incorporate their document as part of the recommendation?
I think,
I
well,
think we would
I think we
incorporate
could
it. right?
incorporate
I think it gets
into the-
incorporated,
Gets
and
incorporated.
I don't know if, I think we leave it up to the planning department to, or to when they write it, to insert it accordingly. Is that correct, counsel?
Yes, I would say they're raising issues of, we will take this and make it into added items in the outline. Climate change is a specific one they're asking for, so that'll be its own separate call out because that's not specifically called out yet. The invertebrates, the species, that's already incorporated, so it's brought into that. But I think the bigger issue that they're raising is the climate change substance, so that is.
That would be a new category.
So that would be its own section in the impact
Exactly.
statement.
Yeah, and then areas where public access and that can be
Correct, the same
put into the categories that.
Yes, and how the impacts would affect their property, yes.
Correct. Okay, thank you. We agree, everybody?
I agree.
Thank you.
Recreation.
Let's pull up
Every item we have.
pull up Mr. Bregman's
Right, well,
concern. And my feeling from reading it, we can go through it again quickly, but I think we're, so the current concern with Mr. Bregman, as well as
Mr.
And
Kopinski.
the neighbors that he represents, as well as the Karpinski, Smittle, deals with the neighbor to the east, identifying, and again, I think that is critical to the impacts. I mean, nothing could be more critical than either side neighbor, in my opinion. So I think we have to look at that. So I would suggest that in the sense that if the planning department can assess the Bragman concerns, if they are addressed, let them be in there if we've already addressed them, but if there is new, and I don't know if you want to go through this and
I think, that in my opinion about the Karpinski letter is that the issues he raises about the extension of the road and whether or not that urban renewal map comes into play here, have something to do with allowing a project to move forward that's going to have a direct impact on that. And so I think we have to include that much of it. Some of what he refers to in his letter is possibly not appropriate to this particular discussion, but I certainly think there are aspects of this related to beach access and what's gone on with those bags, even though they're off the property, that have something to do with the general impact of improving a project of this caliber, this size.
correct.
And I think the urban renewal was also incorporated in the same draft, right? There was a section there. They may have to add more, but be incorporated into that.
Anything to do with flank erosion, stuff like that, needs to be incorporated into this document. So that's the long and short of it, right?
Access,
And,
access, public
access,
access.
urban renewal, correct?
Yes.
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 All right. Are we okay? I think that sums it up.
Now, this,
No? Are we-
to review in the Mr. Karpinski's letter, do we want to go through each one and see if it's relevant? He does have a board outline.
In the sense that, let's take a look at this. I mean, he's got some emotion in this, so we got to be careful here. So,
I think,
and I think for the most part, we have to look at, did we cover it in the outline, the stuff? I don't want to start throwing things out there where, there could be an emotional attachment or whatever. I think let's be cut and dry about this. I think that, when he says no permits to be issued without all of these
Right.
ever, that's not necessary.
Yeah, that's-
And it's just not
I mean,
necessary
I
to
think
put
we
in there.
just, is there a nexus
We
between,
talk about the
You all
detailed
read.
history is already
right,
discussed.
it's already in there.
Location of structure, all that stuff.
Mhm.
So I think the biggest takeaway from that is the urban renewal and
Yes.
the beach access.
And is there a nexus between the regs of UR and what's actually going on in this application?
Right, and even when it comes to the NOAA maps of flooding, we're dealing with the climate change issue and stuff like that. It's all encompassing, I think. Soil samples, the same thing. So I
Right.
mean,
I just-
it's
it's
well
in the record,
intended,
so I
but,
thought, yeah.
and I think we're covering it.
Yes,
I think a majority of what he's listed in his review has already been covered.
Right.
yes,
Yeah,
I think so
yeah.
too. Just for the record, it's good to have that on the record.
John, you're gonna give me a second. From this point on, I think we have gone through the outline.
Correct. No, you have publicly discussed how you want it supplemented,
Correct.
added the public comments. At this
So-
point now, it's directed,
Now our job is to direct to the town.
correct.
To develop the final scope.
Correct.
The draft final scope.
Scope for your
Which will
review
come
and
back
approval.
to us for review and approval.
That's correct.
That's correct.
So no need for motion, it's just, that's what's gonna happen.
And what's the time frame of that moving forward? Related to SECR.
We have 60 days from the initial submission of the draft, so the dates, we've tracked this already. We will have it available for review by this board at the next session, which I believe is July
16.
16th.
16th.
Correct.
Yep, a week from today.
Are we going to get it before that?
Of course,
Yep.
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, board members, do we need a motion for that to send to the town or just direct the town from the chair?
Whatever your policy is, if you do it by resolution, then I encourage you to do it by resolution, but if it's just done as a matter of direction, then that's fine as well.
Okay.
Want a if a formal resolution is more formal, which might be appropriate.
Okay, can we have a motion then, Ms. Maring, to send this to the town for a draft?
Sure. Okay, in the matter of 117 BVA LLC, 117 Bayview Avenue, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-84-1-3.1, I make a motion to direct the content of our discussion this evening with respect to the draft scoping for the DIS to the town for finalization of a draft that will come back to us for final review and consideration.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. I concur.
Concur.
I concur. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. We move on to post-hearing decisions. Our first one is Drew Thompson, 421 East Lake Drive, Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-6-2-18. Thank you, Brian. Drive safe.
Thank you, Brian.
The size and location is 16,468 square feet at 421 East Lake Drive, Montauk. Description is to demolish the existing residence and construct a new 2,307 square foot residence with 655 square foot of decking, porches, and stoops, a 120 square foot shed, new driveway and sanitary system with wall within jurisdiction of setbacks and wetlands. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town, and 3 variances are required for this application. 2 variances of 26.2 feet, 13.8 feet are required from 255-430 of the Town Code to allow the decking to be constructed 73.8 feet and residence 86.2 feet respectively from wetlands where 100-foot setbacks are required. 1 variance is 69 feet from 255-375. The Town Code is required to construct the new sanitary system 131 feet from wetlands where 200-foot setback is required and any other relief necessary. The zoning district is A residence, AE flood zone, elevation 5, and the secret class is type 2. And Member Johan, I think this was in.
This is mine. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thompson, the first public hearing was November 11th, 2023. The survey then was from December 4th, 2023. The post-hearing decision on that first hearing was rendered on January 16th, 2024. The board split at that hearing with 2 members voting to approve and 2 for denial, which resulted in a default decision. The applicants then decided to resubmit an application, and the public hearing for that new application was held on May 12th, 2024. At that hearing, we were working from a survey from George Walbridge dated March 16th, 2024. Andy Hammer represented the applicant at the second hearing. The applicant is seeking to demolish an approximately 720 square foot residence and replace it with a 2,307 square foot residence with associated 665 square feet of decking, porches, and stoops. At the time of their original application, the applicants were seeking to build a 2,672 square foot residence that was then reduced before, at the time of the hearing, to 2,409 square feet and is now proposed at the 2,307 number, a reduction of 100 square feet from their previous submission. In the new application, they've also reduced the request from decking from the original 1,260 square feet to 1,075 square feet at the time of the December hearing to a now 655 square feet in the latest proposal. It's a reduction of 420 square feet. The footprint of the proposed house and decking has been reduced slightly from 1,420 square feet to 1,363 square feet, a reduction of 57 square feet. Additionally, clearing will be reduced from an earlier proposed 7,880 square feet to 6,803 square feet, a reduction of 1,077 square feet. In this newest proposal, the residence decking and septic have all been moved slightly landward and away from the wetlands. At both hearings, the size of the proposed residence and concern over the project's possible environmental impact were the board's primary concerns. The applicant is seeking to convert a small cottage-sized house into a 4-bedroom residence. They have proposed to place it in what is essentially the same location as the existing structure and will move an existing shed from the property line at the northeast corner of the parcel to place it into conformity. This is a low-lying lot, but the first floor elevation of the proposed residence is at 8-foot elevation. The proposed house and the IAOWTS septic system are currently designed seem to be placed as far as possible from the wetlands on such a constrained lot. The project proposes to reduce clearing by more than 1,000 people, which I've already mentioned. I think that I think the question raised by the planning department as to whether or not this is an appropriately sized structure for the lot is one that requires our careful consideration. At the January work session, I voted to approve the project as proposed at that time. I said then that the project is a tough one to approve, but I thought it was, in my mind, it was an even tougher one to deny. The existing house located directly to the north of this parcel is of a size and scale that I don't think that the substantial structure proposed in this application will cause a change to the character of the neighborhood. I also felt that the applicants were making a reasonable effort to design a home suitable to their needs on a tightly constrained lot. I still feel that way, and so I'm going to approve this application. I think that the proposed project does rise to the level that allows me to approve it under 255-420 and to additionally approve the variances required under 255-430 for wetland setbacks and 255-375 for the placement of the sanitary system less than 200 feet from wetlands. I went through this the first time and thought it was a tough decision. I think that by reducing it, for me personally, it makes it a little easier, but I don't really have a lot else to add. I thought that they came back to us twice with two different, second hearing, but they made some changes from their first thing. And while I know this is a really tough lot, and because I know it well from seeing it, I am going to stick with my approval.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, we did have the hearing, the new hearing, May 21st, right? May 21st, 2024, with the Walbridge survey dated 3/18/24, new updated building plans from Victor Cuneo, dated 3/4/24, and the updated re-veg plan from Grimes at 3/26/24. I have a couple of comments about the presentation by the agent. There are a couple of things that I found disturbing. Just voicing my dismay that the statement was made that at the original hearing back in November, October, whenever that was, that he made a rather presumptuous statement that he thought that the application would be approved except for the absence of a specific member of the board. And I took exception to that statement, period. We did leave the record open. I think the board was generous in leaving the record open for, an additional submission, which we did get on December 3rd from the homeowner. But anyway, that's neither here nor there with my decision, but just a comment. Each time we had the initial TAM on this application, We had the subsequent comments from the planner. My initial denial of this application in January was based on the scale of the project, and they did reduce it somewhat, and they did reduce it a little more for this last hearing that we had on May 21st. However, I have to say, I still agree that that the four-bedroom house with a large, I think they have a large den on one floor and a large great room on the other, is still too much on this very constrained property. I do still agree with the updates and the recommendation by Tyler Borsak. He was consistent on every reiteration that he gave us from the original TAM, from the updated comments the first time, and updated comments again for this last hearing. So I'm sympathetic to these people, but I still think that this is too much of a structure for this location. I think it doesn't meet 255, 551, that there are alternatives, and again, it could be made smaller. And I agree with the planning department's recommendation that a more smaller footprint and maybe a 2,000-foot structure. I know they've been chipping away at it a little at a time. However, I think that would be much more appropriate, and I'm still continuing to deny this application.
Thank you. Jane?
Okay, thank you. I just want to give a little background here. I was not a member of the zoning board when the first public hearing was held in October 2023. I was a member when the board had its post-hearing decision on January 16th, 2024. However, I think that was my very first meeting on the board, and there's a usual ZBA protocol that brand new members will sort of abstain from decision-making related to public hearings that preceded them. So I did not vote at that time. Needless to say, in preparation for the May 21st rehearing of the modified application, I reviewed all of what had happened last year and all the documents. So I just wanted to point that out, that I'm up to speed. Also, a couple context points around my deliberation. First, in my deliberation relative to the variance and NRSP standards, first, I'm evaluating the current plans in front of us, and I am looking at the degree to which this current version of the application has changed or improved from the specific version of the plans that were submitted to the record back on December 5th, 2023, and that was for the 2,409 square foot residence. That was the application that was evaluated by my fellow board members that led to the 2-2 default denial. I do not believe the first iteration of the 2,673 square house is a relevant touchstone to be considered at this point. Second, Mr. Hammer, representing the applicants at the rehearing, did spend a fair amount of time telling the board about the applicants and their families' roots in, or as you put it, the fabric of our community, as well as Mr. Hammer's own and his family's familiarity with the Thompsons. I do, of course, appreciate the Thompsons' ties to Montauk, their keen desire to remain living in Montauk and raise their family in that hamlet and in this town and on this parcel. And also that there are some financial constraints that were suggested that don't allow them to have gone and bought a bigger property with a bigger house on it. However, technically, our code standards don't really, I don't think, permit us to favor an application on that basis any more than we can take into account that a different applicant might be a speculative developer or flipper and deny that application. So I'm going to focus more on the benefits to the applicant from the application and their needs. But I just wanted to talk about that context. Also significant context to my deliberation is the environmental sensitivity and constraints of the lot. That it's part of the Peconic Estuary Critical Environmental Area within the East Hampton HPOD, in the Lake Montauk Scenic Area of statewide significance, that the wetlands in jurisdiction are a direct conduit to Lake Montauk, and also that the total lot area is 58% pre-existing non-conforming or substandard to the A-zone lot area minimum, and it would be even more sort of substandard if when you realize that there are 2 flag strips on this property and the real buildable area between the other 2 lots is really 10,730 square feet, also excluding the wetlands. So it's a very constrained property, which I take into account also in the deliberations. We also have seen in Member Johan's first site report, he indicated standing water can happen closer to the shoreline. There were also photos submitted into the record from the neighbor that showed very significant flooding at one point on both her property and I think running up. So this is an area, I guess, that we could consider flood prone. So the application before us, as we know, it's a tripling of house size versus the existing, and the new decking, which has been reduced meaningfully from the last version of the application, is still increasing 6-fold. I want to just run now through the variance standards and address them as I see them relative to this application. So 255-850A, will the grant of the variance cause an undesirable change in character of the neighborhood or create detriment to nearby properties? To this, I mean, we're not really looking at a broad neighborhood, but to this I answer yes, relative to the neighboring property to the south. The greatly expanded mass and scale, the height of the structure, the significant fenestration, as well as the second floor decking on the south side of the new house in such close proximity to the adjoining lot will likely have a material negative impact on the peaceful enjoyment of that property owner's parcel. So with respect, I do not think that this standard is met. B, can the benefit sought by the applicant be achieved by some method other than variances? The applicant never, as I think there's a burden clause in the code, it's the applicant's burden, provided a narrative as to why they could not design a brand new house that could meet their needs for more bedrooms, more living space in an alternative way that could have been still somewhat smaller and eliminated the need for variances. In fact, during the public hearing, the applicant's agent stated that, quote, reducing house size wouldn't need to reduce bedroom count. So this standard I also do not see as being met by this application. Will the granting of the variance have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions? I cannot conclude that granting variances for this scale of increase in house size coverages with minimal buffers or much in the way of mitigation, I cannot conclude it will not have an adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the surrounding areas and the lake. So I am at a point where, because when I really look at these standards and I don't think it's making over the hurdle, I am struggling with this application. I know that one thing is that the house size, I also understand that there's no garage and there's no basement, so there's not a lot of other swing space on the property to be used for things like storage and that the house is it. But it is, I am really concerned about the impact on the neighbor to the south.
How is it impacting the neighbor to the south?
It's going to be close to them. It's going to be 2 stories. It's going to be tall. It's going to be looking right onto that house and that property. And there's, you have upper deck, you have a lot of fenestration.
What's the nexus for denying it on that basis?
I just read the standard of. Sorry, where was it?
We're okay. That's all right. We can move
Okay.
on.
So I am really struggling with this one because I understand the needs. I just didn't find it, I didn't feel that they made the case of why an alternative design of still smaller couldn't be done while still achieving their needs. So, sorry, I mean, I'm leaning towards denying.
Okay. Denise?
Thank you. My reason for denial in the first application was the issue of clearing and its close proximity to Lake Montauk. The proposed clearing at the time was 7,811 square feet with a proposed re-veg of 633 square feet. Now they are proposing clearing on the property after construction to 6,803 square feet, plus a 10-foot vegetative buffer between the structure and the wetland in total. This buffer adds 633 square feet of increased native vegetation to mitigate impacts of the new structure. The residence is now actually further from the wetland than it currently exists, and has been shifted more landward and was designed to meet pyramid regulations on a very constrained lot, which was not an easy task. The total living area has been reduced by 11%. They have redesigned the proposed exterior decking by 15%, and they have reduced the footprint by 8%. They have hired James Grimes Land Design to implement a 10-foot vegetative buffer between the proposed structure and the wetlands, adding 633 square feet of increased vegetation to mitigate the impacts of the new structure. Because of the constraints of the property, and this is something I took into consideration, they are unable to have a basement or a garage. So the second story is really an important part of this application. So I believe there has been, and I did previously deny this, but I think in this case, there's been a tremendous response on the part of the applicant in honoring this board's denial and working towards a better application. They have also, in the previous hearing, removed the proposed hot tub, which eliminated the need for a variance. They've moved the shed to 10 feet from the property line, eliminating the need for another variance. So I think in good faith, they have explored alternatives. I believe this application is in keeping with NRSP and variance standards, and I'm approving it. I also want to go on record that I completely respect the planning department's opinion. I just can't reconcile how reducing the gross floor area by 300 feet will reduce any environmental constraints. This is not an 8,000 square foot lot. This is 18,000 square feet. And I really don't feel that this approval will change the character of the neighborhood. I think the applicants will be good stewards of the land, and I applaud their effort in meeting the constraints of the property, since this is a buildable lot, and I appreciate the willingness to work with this board to make a better application, which I think this is. For all the reasons stating above, I've already stated, I am approving this application in its entirety.
Thank you. As you know, I voted to approve it the last time. I remain with that approval. I think this is pulled back somewhat. They reduced the massing. I thought the idea of reducing the roof line was a good idea from a massing standpoint. I struggle with arguments as far as denial for size based on what a neighbor will see when there are no area variances requested. I struggle with a nexus for denial if there's a family room or dining room or whatever in the house. I'm not sure those are, in my view, adequate nexus for denial. I think if you look at the character of the neighborhood, the house to the south is of equal or larger size, so that's okay. I think you have the Krabby Cafe next door, the commercial aspects around. I think that the character of the neighborhood is not a what do you call it, let's say a uniform type of, or homogeneous definition. With that, I think that it boils down to an NRSP. I think this application, with the increased re-veg, the septic system or whatnot, even though it is required, is an environmental benefit to this property, and I think I will stick to my approval. Got it? Council, we okay? Thank you.
So are you leaning towards still, or are you?
I think, by the way, I hope I wasn't confusing when I said south. I meant the house that is closest to the shoreline, not the larger one on the roadside. So I just wanted to be clear. I mean, like I said, it was mixed, and I did take, maybe I'm reading those variance standards a little more literally than balancing it against other things. I mean, it's a 3-2 approval, right? So,
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
What?
No need, I mean,
Yeah.
just for the.
I mean, like I said, I was, I also acknowledge that there's no basement, there's no garage, so extra space in the house is okay. I'll approve the application as well.
thank you. Okay. Next, we move to Jeffrey Bragman at
I'm
22.
recused from this, so I'm going to
That's the
step
next one,
out.
right? Oh, we got Denson, sorry.
Oh, we're doing,
I want to go.
we're doing Denson first. Okay.
Wait a minute.
Denson Michael at 414 Old Montauk Highway, Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-22-1-3.1. Size and location is 120,000 square feet at 414 Old Montauk Highway, Montauk. The description is to extensively renovate, construct 940 square feet of first and second story additions, 40 square feet of terrace, 724 square feet of swimming pool structure, and reconfigure the existing driveway on a parcel of land containing freshwater wetlands. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420, variances from 255-430, minimum wetland setbacks of the town code, and any other relief necessary. Variances of 74.3 feet, 65.3 feet, 67.4 feet are required to allow the closest of the additions, the terrace and the swimming pool and terrace 25.7 feet, 34.7 feet, 32.6 feet from wetlands respectively, where a 100-foot setback is required. The application also requires temporary land clearing within 50 square feet of wetlands. The zoning district, A10 residence, zone X flood zone, and a secret class is type 2. This was,
This is me.
that's correct.
And it took just long enough because somehow it got mixed up with another file. So I just found it.
Oh, that's disastrous when that happens.
I was panicking.
I know.
Anyway, okay. Just get organized here. Okay, so the original hearing date, the only hearing date on this one was April 30th of 2024. The agent for the applicant was David Kirst of Kirst, Matthews, Cooley, I forget the order of the law firm, but from that law firm, Sharon. The survey that we had at the time of the hearing was dated 6/21/2023, which we received on 8/30/2023. We had a septic site plan from TF Engineering dated May 12th of 2023. Now, subsequent to the hearing, we did leave the record open. There was a lot of discussion, and in the TAM, one of the recommendations was a denial of the pool. This property is very large. It's a 126,000 square foot lot. However, roughly 70% of that is wetlands. It's surrounded entirely by wetlands, as you can see on the survey up on the screen. And so we did leave the record open for the applicants. There was a lot of discussion about the septic system. They are offering an IA system. Part of that, as mitigation, although the house was a house that was built somewhere, but 1986, yes, for the same family. It's been in their home. Then the house was in need of some repair, plus the house as it existed and was built was just a one-bedroom house with a loft area, and they are making some not very large additions to the property, and they're removing certain portions of it and making it into 2 stories, however, to accommodate their family. However, so they are increasing the development of the property by almost the 50% cap, but not quite at it. But with that, considering the property is so constrained with the wetlands that there is nothing that can be put on this lot. I think the wetlands surrounding it entirely are just about, there's nothing you could put, like everything on the property that is not wetland is within 30 feet of a wetland, pretty much. So, and the planning department, despite, the 49%, had no objection at all to the redesign of the house. The way they were doing it was very thoughtfully laid out. They were taking away some portions of the terracing and shifting it a little bit, but overall, they were making it 2 stories. But right now, as I said, the existing structure was, subject to that double GFA because of the vaulted ceilings and stuff. So they were eliminating that, and so I have no problem with the house itself. One of the variances, one of the portions of the addition is 25.7 feet from the wetland. So that's one of the variances that they need. Another one was, the numbers on the survey threw me on this a little bit. The 65.3, the terrace and the swimming pool. But I thought on the survey it wasn't quite the right number. Regardless, though, we did get an updated survey on this, which actually eliminates the patio around the pool and the terrace. So that was one variance that is no longer required or requested from them. And the swimming pool on the new survey it shifted a little bit further back from the wetlands than in the original. So it's at 45.4 feet away from the wetlands now with the revised application. Those are the 3 variances, and then, of course, it needs an NRSP. And the IA system was offered as mitigation. There's actually, with the changes they made, there were 2 sheds on the property that are both slated to be removed. One in the area north of where the pool is proposed to go, and another one toward the western side of the house. One of those sheds in particular was only 3 feet away from the wetlands. But overall, the way they redesigned the house was very thoughtful. And they're actually decreasing 80 feet in the lot coverage with the removal of the sheds and the redesign of portions of the house. And the total increase of the GFA, the lot, is 940 feet, I believe, is the size of the structure now. And the 415-foot decrease in clearing. And with the one big discussion on at the original hearing was about the location of the septic system. And we had the septic plan, but the chair at that time, one of the major concerns was if there was no pool there, could the septic system be moved closer and farther away from the wetlands, not closer to anything, farther away from the wetlands. And to that, the applicant had David Rhodes of TF Engineering go out and do more soil percolation tests on the property. And we did receive a report on that on June 3rd, dated May 29th, 2024, which showed that even if the pool were not approved on this project, that there's nothing they could do about the change in the location on the septic system because of the areas in the diagram as it shows the soils that did not percolate. The septic system wouldn't function in the area where the pool is proposed. I think this is a good application. I'm very torn about the pool. They described it, it's a 144 square foot pool. They called it a plunge pool. Now, I'd like to open that discussion because we do not have a pool plan. We do not have a pool plan. They did move it back slightly, but they offered, in addition, they really want this pool. It's obviously, they really want this pool. And as additional mitigation, they increased the revegetation. They redesigned with the new submission, they redesigned the driveway a little bit. They took out the terrace around and the patio around the pool. And they are going to remove an area where he has a garden today and revegetate that entire area also. So I actually think that this is a good application, and I'm leaning toward approving the pool. My big question on the pool, a lot of that goes to the fact that they're calling it a plunge pool, but they didn't give us a pool plan or a construction protocol, so I don't know if this is the kind of plunge pool that, you know, they lift in and drop into the ground, or if it's something other than that. So I'm not sure. I'd like to approve the pool, but knowing that there would be no adverse impacts of the installing of it. I'm not sure how we would handle that if anybody else is going to approve it. They also, aside from the revegetation, are offering a 69,000 square foot scenic easement in order to get the pool. And what I like about that scenic easement, that it would be covering the entire area of the wetlands, but I know in the TAM that Brian Frank had done, he was very high on the wildlife and the flora and fauna in this location on this property. Some of the species that are known to exist out in this area. So I think a scenic easement protecting that area for eternity is an excellent thing to really keep some of our natural resources and our plants. And spotted turtle was mentioned as being observed. Blue spotted salamander has been observed on site, has not been observed on the site, but known to occur around this moorland area of Montauk. Except for I wonder, I would like to, if this were approved, I'd like to condition it on getting a construction protocol in advance of a permit on here, and a pool, the definition and the design of the pool. But I am looking to approve this in its entirety.
I think the surveyor is going to go crazy trying to define the metes and bounds of this easement. That's the shape of it. It's going to be difficult. Anyway, Ed, you want to go?
Yeah, I'd like to ask, before I start, Member Berger, maybe I'm wrong here. I had the decrease in lot coverage at 415 feet and a decrease in clearing at 800.
Yeah.
And you
800?
said decrease in clearing was 415. And
Maybe
I'm checking that.
included the new
I said decrease in clearing is 415, right?
Yeah, but now I'm wondering if it was, if you included the revegetation, maybe I didn't include the revegetation.
Well-
You thought the decrease was 800?
Yeah, that's what I thought. But it's a matter of a point here, but we know that they're decreasing.
Yeah, it's going down.
And the other thing was,
Let's see on this.
is the scenic easement 69 or 79?
I have 79.
I have
79.
79.
Yeah, I misstated that one too. Let me
It's
look
laid
at
out
the
in
letter.
It's
It's in the
laid out
letter.
in
It's in the record.
It's in the
Oh,
letter.
it's 79,000. I read it wrong.
79,000.
Yeah, it's 79,000. The clearing with the removal of the garden and the revegetation will reduce clearing from 18,472 to 16,152. So it's actually
2,700.
2,700. Yeah. Where's clearing?
It goes up in
Construction clearing, there's some additional clearing that's required for the septic system. The construction clearing is 18,885. And they don't mention clearing, the after, oh yeah, it is final, it's there, 16,152.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Denson, this, to start with, this is sort of one of those incredible lots where there's almost nothing you can do on it till you're up against wetlands in all directions, and it's very thickly vegetated, the part that's not cleared, which is minor on the size of the lot, but for good reason, because it is very much a wetland completely around the house. It makes it very difficult to come up with a successful project on this property, this parcel. It's important to note that it is a very small house on the inside. Part of its floor space is over the double height calculations because there is a large cathedral ceiling in this barn-like structure. So that's a factor. I thought that the proposal on the house is an intelligent one. If we're increasing the first floor coverage only by 30 square feet, and we're somehow, they're getting 940 feet total with 910 on the second floor. So they're getting some positive results for themselves by utilizing the footprint they have and coming up with this creative. We have a lot of these things come in front of us where the expansion is our major problem. Here, there's not a problem for me with expansion. I think there are a lot of points here that pointed to the fact that the Densons the applicants very much wanted this project to move forward with the pool included. And that has to do with the things already mentioned, but I'll just go over them anyway. It's a moderate addition. They're willing to remove a raised garden and revegetate, even though they said at the hearing that they, and I should say I was not at the hearing, but I did review all the documents and watch the hearing, so I'm familiar with the process, but I was not here that evening. Thank you. They are going to put a new septic in. The septic is going in about the only place it can go, as it turns out, when we listen to the technical analysis of people who said that percolation in this area, which I agree is very, very difficult, and they found some spot that they think it will work. That was lucky for them because it's not an easy place to find that. There's the decrease in lot and clearing numbers we just discussed. The two sheds that are to be removed, they've been long-standing. Again, this project, this house is more than almost 40 years old. I think it's about 40 years right now since it was built. So they've been there a good long time, and part of the ownership, since they've taken ownership of it, they're to be removed. Let's see. I think that the plunge pool is the discussion really here, right? The pool on this spot, it was recommended by the planning department that the pool should be just a step too far. And I think everybody knew that. I think that the applicant's representative said he knew it was a heavy lift. He knew this was one that coming in front of a board and asking for a pool in an area that's this close to and constrained by wetlands is a very tough one. But I think what happened here, from my point of view, which is similar to Member Berger, is that a lot of effort was made to find what can I do to get it. Giving up the gardens, which the owner, when he had a chance to testify, said were important to him, but so was the pool, so he gave up those. Giving up the sheds, which they have active use on now. One of them is more than just a shed. It can be used for other purposes. That's a nice thing, recreational purposes. I think that was a sacrifice on their part. Giving up the patio around the pool on the later submission was also something to say, well, that's a less hardened area in contact or in close contact with the wetlands. I don't think it's an easy one to just go and say that we are willing to approve the pool, but I do believe that the plunge pool can be installed with a limited amount of damage environmentally. We're not talking about a large gunite pool where there could be a lot of over cutting here. I think this can be done. I think we've seen that in other applications. And so although I know that there are great constrictions here based on the lot, I think that this was a case where the applicant did just about the maximum that could be done on this small lot. They gave up just about everything you could give up. And we are going to see a decrease in clearing. And I think in the end, this is something where I think we have to recognize that the maximum effort was done, and in my mind, it was enough of an effort to approve the application. So with the same reservations that both the planning department and Member Berger has about a pool this close to there, I think nonetheless, this does rise to a level where I'm willing to approve this application.
Thank you. Denise?
Thank you. Initially, I was very much against approval of this project since it really was a poor candidate and did not, in my opinion, meet the standards for grant of an NRSP or variances. But I feel that the applicant, after leaving the public hearing open, has really addressed many of the concerns I had. As per a May 31st letter submitted by the applicant's attorneys, they have made substantial improvements to this project, which adequately, in my opinion, mitigate approving this project. My approval includes increasing setbacks from wetlands for the septic system, 19.7 feet to 23.9. For the pool, 43.5 feet to 45.4 by adjusting the driveway and pool location. Removal of the terrace which surrounded the pool, eliminating a requested variance. Removal of a raised garden and revegetate that area as mitigation for the pool, which will result in an additional 2,320 square feet of revegetation, which in my world is a good thing. The applicant has offered further mitigation by offering a scenic easement of the existing wetlands on the property. The scenic easement would protect approximately 79,000 square feet of wetlands, plus the town code required 10 feet setback from the easement. 2 sheds being removed, one of which is 3 feet from the wetlands, is a positive. In terms of the additions, they are mostly within the existing footprint. So again, I think the mitigation being offered is adequate for approval. So for all the reasons stating, I now feel that this applicant has done everything possible to make this a better application, and it will not cause any detriment to the wetlands and the neighborhood, and are now requesting the minimum variances necessary. I feel this application is in compliance with NRSP standards pursuant to 255-420 and variances from 255-430, minimum wetland setbacks of the town code, and I am approving this amended project in its entirety.
Thank you. Jane?
Yes, thank you. The GFA of the house with the addition is expanding 46%. That's just under the 50% expansion cap. The new GFA is 2,860. And overall, that expansion, I don't see this level of expansion as being unreasonable when put in the context of the full lot size, which is nearly 3 acres, or even the 1 acre adjusted to exclude the wetlands. I do believe the reconstruction and addition to the house itself meets the variance and NRSP standards. In particular, the variances, as has been said, are mostly for structure that is over the existing structure or within the current clearing and areas of disturbance in the footprint. So although the variances are numerically material, I don't believe the expansion will materially change the land use on the property. And as I said, I think it's reasonable. And I also think the benefits to the applicant exceed any possible detriment related to the adjustment in the size of the house. I don't see it as having impact on the neighborhood, given that it's not really a neighborhood here and is not really very visible. And also they're just not adding, this is a lot where you don't have a lot of other structures on the property, a lot of amenities, for the obvious reasons with all the wetland. We talked about the reduction in clearing. I also do want to note that the building coverage goes down a slight 100 square feet, but building coverage will be only 3.9% versus 15% max allowable. And the total coverage per the survey is reduces about 300 square feet and will be 11.85% compared to the theoretical maximum of 40%. So I think the design is fairly compact. So this leaves the issue of the 144 square foot proposed swimming pool, which has been described as a plunge pool. It did say in one document I saw in the file that the pool is no more than 5 feet deep. And we don't know if it's going in the ground or if it will be sitting on the ground, so we don't know that exactly. I, like many other members here, I often say that swimming pools are unnecessary amenities. I know I always respect Brian Frank, who wrote the TAM and, was pretty definitive about saying this is a poor candidate. And he was concerned, quote, the unnecessary introduction of a source of water deep within wetland setbacks. He sees that as inconsistent with NRSP standards. I do diverge from that. In a rare case, I find myself diverging. I think that because the decking and the patio around the proposed pool has been removed, it's also a small pool, not very deep. I'm assuming there'll be dry wells. I'm sure we can make sure that there's a condition for how the waters are drained when the season is over. So I don't actually see this pool disrupting the wetlands or contaminating them. And in particular, given how constrained the overall property is, it just doesn't leave much room for a lot of other amenities or features. So I do believe, again, the benefits of this outweigh the concerns. Again, we spent a lot of time sort of asking, was the pool impacting a better place for the septic system? And I think that's been resolved post the hearing with the memo that we saw about the other percolation tests. So I'm looking to approve the pool as well in this application. And I think the mitigation for the pool is the scenic easement of 79,000 square feet of property over those wetlands. I think that's really amazing. I actually, who am I to say no to this offer to remove the garden? I actually don't even feel that the garden needs to be removed. I think gardens are good things for a family. So I don't know that I could say, don't remove it, but I would have even been willing to approve this pool with the garden remaining.
It's a big impact on clearing.
I know, but it's.
I think
garden,
the trade-off.
Yeah, that's a
the trade-off is
mitigation
a positive
offer.
Trade-off, though, to
Right.
identify the pool.
Yeah.
I would, if it were me, I'd keep the garden, not the pool, but.
Me too. What is that line from The Godfather? Leave the gun, take the cannoli,
That's
right?
Favorite movie.
That really helps with the
No, it's leave the gun,
mitigation.
no, leave the gun, take the cannoli.
One of the reasons.
Denise, you want to go?
Didn't I?
did.
She went.
I'm sorry, yeah.
I was last.
Jeez.
Down to you, boss.
I agree with my board members. I don't really have a lot to add. I did have reservations about the pool. I think they were adequately addressed. I think the trade-off of the garden, I mean, if you look at where the garden is, though, it's right on the edge of the wetlands. And so I think that's a good trade-off. I think actually we are ending up with a project that's pretty much a win here.
Now, let me ask you something. We have the conditions. Do we condition this on a construction protocol?
Yes, I agree with your assessment on that. I think that we should recondition a construction protocol. It's basically related to the pool, right?
Yes.
Just with the pool. So what type of, we want to see the type of pool, and I think.
And there's something I saw here that
How
does
it's gonna be
indicate it's going to be in the ground.
I
not
want to make
sitting
sure
on
it's a
top of
true
it.
plunge pool.
Yeah, on the
Yeah.
survey, I think there's a pool profile.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
See a little bit of the patio elevation versus
I
the
kind of
depth
thought there was too.
to groundwater. But that's not a construction protocol by
Right,
any means,
no.
but it does that. It does show
But it does
It's going to be
Say
about
depth?
5 feet deep, I
Does it say
think.
5 feet
at
deep?
some point. Yeah.
Right, it's partly out of the ground. It looks like it's sticking up.
But what are construction protocol? And it would tell us the method of excavation, and
Yeah.
that will satisfy us to know that there is some plan.
So who would approve that once, well, it'd be
Well, it's prior to a building permit.
right? Okay, and the scenic easement language would have to be added. I don't think that's in the current project conditions. And it's on this, we did read, I don't know if I mentioned this, we did receive an updated septic site plan also. And the only thing is that on that, they didn't take the garden out. Is that something that we should have an updated?
Oh, absolutely.
plan
The
for that?
updated survey has to be
It
there.
has to
Well, an updated survey
They submitted
and the site plan.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it definitely needs to be updated.
Do we need a drywall for the pool? Or is it on there? Is it
Well, that's part of the building process. There's always a drywall. They didn't show it.
Sometimes they get called
I
out,
can't
yeah.
even read that.
Council?
Yep.
Thank you.
I have the 2 additional conditions and then everything that was in the TAM.
Okay, let me check to make sure it's
The usual, the 4-foot project limiting fence, clearing of vegetation shall be strictly limited to the boundaries established by the board. Revegetation plan. Is there a revegetation plan?
No, we need that too.
Okay.
We need that. I didn't see
1,000
one.
liters, 2-foot
Yep.
separation, driveway composed of clean, local, water pervious quartz gravel, CNRs, Article 24 freshwater wetland permit, and
Scenic easement.
then I added the scenic easement, the construction protocol related to the pool, and I wrote in the updated survey with site plan with the garden removed, but that may already be worked in there somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, the survey had the garden removed. It was the site plan for the septic system that still showed it in there. So I don't know if that's a big item or not on a separate plan.
I would,
The survey is what we care about.
Huh? Yeah, on the survey, it shows that it's coming out and going to be revegetated. So we don't need that part of it.
okay, so it's just the sanitary site plan that doesn't show that shows the
Yeah,
garden
it's
still
a
existing.
small
I
item, but it's
personally
still showing
think that
there
that's
on-
probably fine, but it's up to the board.
Which one?
What?
I don't see a problem with it. They're just using an old document to do something.
Well, it was an updated document
I understand, but-
dated May 2nd.
But the survey they submitted, which we've taken into the record, shows that the garden is.
Shows that the garden's going, yeah.
Well, I don't know if they knew whether we'd approved the pool, so. I didn't remove the garden yet.
Well, I think the septic is just separate, so it doesn't matter.
No, that's okay,
I
but
don't
the
know.
survey will prevail over the
The
septic.
survey will prevail?
Exactly.
Okay, then they don't have to update it again.
Okay.
Okay, next we have Jeffrey L. Bragman at 22 Shore Road, Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-131-8-7. Size and location is 48,327 square feet at 22 Shore Road, Montauk on the Sea, Section A, Map Number 2438, Amagansett. The description is an appeal of the building inspector's determination dated January 18th, 2024 concerning 102.8 of the town code. Relief sought is 255-850A, an appeal of the building inspector's determination dated January 18th, 2024 concerning 102-8 of the town code. Appellant seeks to challenge the building inspector's issuance of a building permit that the residence as approved does not comply with FEMA construction regulations and the residential code of the New York State. The zoning district is B residence, VE 17 velocity flood zone, and is secret class type 2. And board, before we get into our discussion, we had a challenge by Michael Sendletsky, who represented, which was one of the owners. I have it written down.
The new owner.
The new owner.
Yeah.
He was representing the new owner, talking about, there was an addendum number 2 to the application, challenging that it was beyond the timeliness of 60 days from the thing. There's no question that the original appeal was within the 60 days, but he's questioning, and it was months after. So there's no question that it came beyond. We discussed this with, or I discussed this with council in pre-meeting. Although there is relativity, or there's a, she's accused. I'm sorry, Jane. Although there is legitimate concern that the timeliness of the addendum, there is a timeliness issue. It is not specific, or is it, in other words, a black and white issue as far as he's bringing in a new issue or whatever. There seems to be some overlap in the addendum. So I believe there was a timeliness factor, but I also believe that as a board, we should move on, consider the case as was presented to us and make a decision based on the merits of the case. And
May I add something too? For me, I can only speak for myself, but whether the second addendum is considered timely or not, it really will not have any effect on my decision.
And I ditto that. I looked at both, and I was concerned about the timeliness also. But I think clearly, as you said, the original application submitted to us in the beginning of February is timely. And I think that item that was addressed in that application for the basement walls is clear to rule on, where there was additional items in the addendum, which I don't feel was, well, I don't know if that was timely or not. But again, I don't think it's relevant to the discussion
That's how
of
I
the
felt.
original application.
you okay, Dan?
I am. I think also that the description of what we're here to decide is an appeal of the building inspector's determination. Was he right in issuing the building permit? A lot of that information, which may be pertinent to other discussions, did come in later. And I'm not sure it's pertinent to whether or not the building inspection was in question. This is material that's later and of concern, but not in this particular decision in my mind.
Thank you. Whose was this?
Oh,
Who did this?
who did it? Well, it was an appeal.
We kind of, it
Nobody
was an
really
appeal,
did
so we didn't do it.
Right, so we can just,
Yeah.
Who would like to
who
begin?
wants to start? I'll start.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. I'll give you a little breakdown of what we have in the record. The ZBA approved the last application submitted to them on February 1st, 2022. The ZBA issued its, this is the last one, I think.
The original one?
The ZBA issued its written determination on July 25th, 2023, with a 3-2 vote to approve. Chief Building Inspector, and this was filed with the clerk July 26, 2023. The Chief Building Inspector, Joe Palermo, issued a building permit for the house and pool on January 18th, 2024. Jeffrey L. Bragman submitted an appeal interpretation on 22/24, noting on the application name of owner, 22 Shore LLC, name of applicant, if different from the owner, Jeffrey L. Bragman. Attached to application were supporting documents, ZBA determination filed with the town clerk on 7/26/2023. An addendum to the appeal of the issuance of the building permit, which notes FEMA regulations were violated for construction in a VE zone, and with that, supporting documents. Mr. Senlensky, in a letter to this board dated May 13th, noted he has been retained by 22 Shore Road LLC, the owner, who has owned the property since January 26, 2024, was not noticed about this appeal. Notice was provided to the previous owner of 22 Shore LLC. Mr. Senlensky notes, and I quote, "This is highly prejudicial to my client as the outcome of the appeal and potential delays in hearing this matter pose a significant threat to my client's investment and ownership of the property." Mr. Senlesky also asked that Member Maring recuse herself because of the existing conflicts of interest due to her activity and objection to granting an NRSP prior to her being appointed to this board, and Member Maring did recuse herself. Further procedural issues were addressed concerning a second addendum to the appeal of the issuance of the building permit received by this board secretary, Samantha Young, on May 3rd, 2024. Denise Schoen, in a letter to this board dated May 14th, 2024, noted to the board her firm, the Adam Miller Group, represent the former owners of 22 Shore LLC, which received ZBA approval and a building permit to construct a residence and swimming pool on January 18th, 2024. The property was sold to a new owner in January of 2024. Her firm believes that Joe Palermo issued the building permit in compliance with all town, state, and federal code requirements, including all FEMA codes and conditions. Now, the two claims that are being made in this appeal are the grade around the house are lower than stated on the plans, and FEMA does not permit the type of construction permitted on this property. However, in a letter dated May 13th, 2024, from Nathaniel Santon, a licensed professional engineer, he refutes the statements made in the first addendum to appeal and made the following points. The residence and pool permit documents indicate that both structures are supported on pile lattice. The resident permit documents indicate that any walls below flood elevation are designed as breakaway within the pile lattice so as to not obstruct wave action. The pool structure permit documents indicate that the pool structure is designed as a separate structure capable of withstanding code-required lateral loading, including wave action, such that does not become a risk to the building structure. The design of both the residence and pool meet both the intent and the requirements of the FEMA flood design guidelines for proper structural design in a coastal region. And Mr. Stanton has his licensed professional engineer stamp on that letter. The architect, Nile Oza, also addressed, sent a letter on April 15th, 2024, which reads, I hope this helps alleviate the confusion around our drawings on the addendum to the appeal of the issuance of the building permit for 22 Shore LLC. The western section view of the house plans, A301, showing dune elevation in red with claimed natural grade at elevation 6 feet. Constructed space below grade. This elevation is not correct. E61 does not represent the natural grade at the dune. It represents grade at the street, and she referenced it on a survey. Short memo of RC NYS Residential Code of New York State incorporating requirements of VE 17 Special Flood Hazard Area prohibiting basement floors below grade. Unfinished basement storage is not below grade on all sides, indicated on the survey as well. As officers of the court, they are, I mean, anybody submitting anything to this board, they are obliged and compelled to submit plans to this board that are genuine and trustworthy. Enclosed with Denise Schoen's May 14th letter were supporting materials that were entered into the record by a licensed professional architect and engineer that have extensive skill and knowledge in dealing with local, state, and federal regulations when dealing with construction and building within FEMA zones on a daily basis. For all of the reasons stated and all of the documents that I've reviewed in the file, I am upholding the issuance of a building permit by our Chief Building Inspector, Joe Palermo.
Thank you. Ed, you want to go?
Yeah, thank you. That was a very complete analysis. Thank you for that. This was an interesting case for us to have to consider because this information that came in May is clearly beyond the limitations for for any submission. And we can see that. I think that it is, time limited here. There were some very interesting things brought to light in that hearing, and I think they brought, Mr. Bragman brought in some experts who were able to speak effectively about what they thought were the shortcomings of the construction as it is proceeding. I think there was a great discussion about a wall, and that wall was just to be cut down, whether that wall was initially meant to be temporary and is now permanent, and whether that goes beyond the building permit or beyond the intent of the building permit. All of those, I think, are issues that should be being considered, but I don't think they should be being considered by us. I think that is after the issuance of the building permit, and I think that's something that should be being looked at through code enforcement and by the building department. I think what we're being asked to assess here is whether or not the building permit that was issued on the January 18th by Joe Palermo was one that was issued correctly. Did he make a major mistake in issuing that? Was there a lack of research? Was there some way in which the engineering was not either respected or understood? He spoke on his own behalf after it was a very lengthy hearing. Oh, and again, I want to say I was not at that hearing. I should have announced that, but I did read through all the documents and reviewed the lengthy hearing on LTV on the video. And I think that what his case was that he looked at this several times. He looked at it up back and forth. He used the standards he's always asked to use about the breakaway wall structure and whether or not this was FEMA compliant, about that whole lower level. There was a lot of discussion about that, whether there should be whether there should have been a different technique used in constructing those walls, and whether or not he felt it was adequate. He said he did. He said he looked at this several times, and when he issued that, did he do it in error because he didn't understand the engineering? I think the engineering he had at that time supported his decision. I think, as was mentioned by just recently now by Denise in her presentation, that there was a significant amount of support for his decision in what was presented in the application and had not been challenged before this after the permit was issued. I don't have a problem supporting the building inspector on this. I will say that I found some very compelling things in that hearing, but I do think they come later on, and I think that's a discussion that can be pursued. I'm not sure it's in front of us. You can correct me, other board members, if I'm wrong. I think what's in front of us is, are we supporting the decision of the building inspector that he correctly issued that permit based on the information that he thought was accurate and that he should use to rely and support his decision? I think that the issuance of it was done correctly. I think these questions that were raised back later on in May have to do with methods of construction, whether or not protocol was followed, whether or not the building permit allowed for the construction that's going on now, whether or not this wall that was a great deal of discussion, which it deserves to have discussion, had anything to do with the permit. Those are issues that I don't think we're here to discuss tonight. So I'm, for those reasons, and based on, again, a lot of what was just entered into here by Member Savarese, Vice Chair Savarese, I think that I'm willing at this time to support the building inspector's determination.
Thank you. Gary?
Okay, I agree with my fellow board members. Going back to, well, what I took into account was Mr. Joe Palermo's testimony at the hearing, that he, at the time he reviewed the application, he was satisfied with it and with the architectural and engineering plans. He read about the breakaway walls, not totally concealed in the dunes, and he was very satisfied with the construction protocol. Now in the appeal, Mr. Bragman did include the determination that this board had done when the project was approved, and has the approved construction protocol date. And Mr. Palermo said he followed the construction protocol, and that everything was copacetic at the time that the permit was issued. There was a letter from H2M that I think was previously referenced also, that said that the purpose of the review was to determine the basement structure is compliant with the New York State residential building codes as it pertains to basement structure below the base flood elevation. And that document also clearly determined that the project and that the plans were copacetic or, as did comply to all the code. And so I too am going to uphold the decision by Joe Palermo to issue the permit on January 20th, or that he issued. And likewise, if something occurred after that, that was during implementation of this project, I think that needs to be addressed with some other authority.
Thank you. I agree. I agree with my board members. There's an interesting timeline that I'm going to bring up. This second addendum was sent May 2nd. In that addendum, the alleges, for instance, the pool was designed without pilings, not on pilings. And on that was on May 2nd. The H2M letter was dated 4/24 prior to that. During the hearing, we found out that indeed the pool was designed with pilings.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to make the assessment to disregard the H2M assessment based on the fact that they did not have the proper documentation to make a proper assessment. It is clear to me if piles were, and I think that listening to Mr. Palermo's testimony, which I think he was succinct, I think he was thorough, and I think he reviewed it. And he even stated he knew it was a controversial application. So I think he was compelled to look at it closely. On top of that, post the second addendum, we have a letter from Croft Engineering, which has already been talked about or brought up this evening. And it's compelling to me that once again, this is the guy who's stamping the drawings, that designed the drawings, that's stamping it. It's his livelihood that he's putting on that stamp, on that drawing. He even stamps the letter. And I think that's compelling. I think it's very compelling to me that he did that. Without any hesitation, I uphold the building inspector's determination. Okay, counsel?
You okay with everything or anything?
I got it. Thank you.
Okay, next we have,
Sorry, Manson.
she's coming.
Oh, I did this so long ago. Let me look.
Next, we have Corey Manson at 28 16th Street in Springs, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-78-2-4.2. Size and location is 22,600 square feet at 28 16th Street, Kingstown Park, Section 1, lots 41 to 50, and part of 16th Street in Block 17, Map Number 499, filed November 16, 1911, Springs, 300. Suffolk Tax Number 378-2-4.2. The description is to allow hot tub and associated deck to remain within side yard setbacks. Two variances of 5 feet and 4.6 feet pursuant to 255-1110 of the East Hampton Town Code are required to allow a hot tub and associated decking to remain 15 feet and 15.4 feet from the side yard lot line where 20 feet is required. Any other relief necessary. The zoning district is B residence zone X, flood zone, and a secret class 2. And this is in member Sabrices.
Okay, just double check my notes. I did this one a while ago. Okay, this public hearing was held June 4th, 2024. Jacqueline Morley appeared on, an attorney, appeared on behalf of the applicant from Twomey, Latham, Shea, and Kelly. Morgan Slater spoke on behalf of the planning department. Existing conditions on the property are depicted on the East End Land Survey dated revised January 13th, 2023. There is a letter in the file from Mark Abramson, Assistant Environmental Protection Director, dated January 30th, 2023, regarding the clearing. Please be advised that I have inspected the above referenced parcel in regards to clearing. I have examined the 2004 aerials and have compared them to the clearing that currently exists. The clearing in the 2004 aerial was approximately 20,100 square feet. The 2004 aerial was taken prior to the adoption of Town Code 255-260. Therefore, the clearing that existed on the property in 2004 is pre-existing non-conforming and is the maximum allowed, with the exception of any clearing in scenic or conservation easements. The existing hot tub is 6.5 feet by 7.25 feet, which is classified as a pool because it's greater than 6 feet long and wide. There is an existing deck and a wall around the decking that has a pending ARB application in order to remain. The work was done without the benefit of a building permit. However, in 2002, there was a building permit opened to construct a hot tub and deck, but it was closed out in 2010 since the work was never completed. There is vegetative screening on the western property line, which I feel is adequate and will help reduce any impact to the neighboring property. There are no protected natural resources present on the property, and the clearing and the coverage on the property are under the maximum allowable. So I do not see any negative environmental impacts from the grant of these structures. ARB approval for the wall around the decking should be sought prior to the issuance of a building permit. The requested variance will not have an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. The hot tub is actually screened from the street and the surrounding yards to ensure privacy. The hot tub and deck are designed to fit within the remaining revegetation on the property. All of the improvements are located in areas that have already been disturbed. The hot tub, were it slightly smaller by 1/2 foot and 1.25 feet respectively, would also be compliant with side yard setbacks. The existing improvements are located within the areas of the property that have already been disturbed. And although the need for relief is self-created, the mere fact that the difficulty is self-created should not preclude the granting of the variance relief. And the relief requested is, in my opinion, the minimum necessary. I am approving this application in its entirety. I do feel it meets the standard for grant of the variance and request, and it is in compliance with 255-1110 of the East Hampton Town Code.
Thank you. Ed?
Thank you. We started in that discussion that night was whether or not the wall is an ARB issue, and it was already brought up by the vice chair that it is. So that wall that's now currently too high will be addressed by another agency, and so it was out of our discussion. This hot tub that's of question, it's interesting that there was a permit that would have allowed it in 2002. It expired, and when they resubmitted, apparently the double setbacks were now going to be enforced on this size tub. Had it been, that permit been left open, of course, they could have moved forward. I think that It is very small. There's no NRSP, which is important. I think the screening has been described. There's also vegetative screening beyond the wall. I think that we're looking for very small variances, 4.6 and 5.0, relatively very small. I realize it's 24%, I think. Let me say, the timing of the building permit, I think it was important that happened from an earlier time to now. Different situation nonetheless, and we have to respect it. I don't think it's a very large ask. I think that the decking was in question, and that we figured out after discussion it was about 900 square feet of decking. Let me see if there's anything else to add. You've already covered it. Oh, yeah, and there was a lot of discussion about looking at the original building permit. We got some help from the planning department to try and determine what looked like a drawing that was done by a crayon. It was very hard to know exactly where the original proposal for the hot tub was, but I was satisfied that where it was originally proposed and where it is now, and where the deck is now, is the one and the same. Hard to know exactly, but it seemed very much that way. It's well screened enough, and I didn't think this was a big issue, and I'm willing to approve it in its entirety.
Thank you. Terry?
Okay, I agree with my fellow board members. I won't reiterate too much, but there were a couple of times that building permits were open for some decking and a hot tub. These never came to fruition, and after several years, that some of those expired. Then there was another building permit for other items, a 900 finally in 2014. There's a building permit for a 900-foot deck, which was renewed in, the last renewal of which was in July of 2018. I agree with this whole scenario. We can see the photos of the hot tub. The hot tub is kind of hidden and enclosed. The 8-foot wall behind it is a factor, but that is being addressed or will be addressed by the ARB. And based on looking at the current survey and the survey that was provided by Morgan to us that was dated from 2022, I don't know how there was some kind of a urban renewal lot line modification done somewhere along the way too. Not really sure if that's a factor in this or not, but you could see with the, I think it was relative to a road, but you could see that pretty much the photos that we have, the old information, looks like this was where the hot tub was originally planned to be when there was a building permit, and just never happened until a long time later. So I am, I don't think it changes the character of a neighborhood. It is, as mentioned before, very well screened. Looks like it's basically in the same location that had been planned prior, and I think it meets all the standards for the approval.
Thank you. Jane?
I see this a bit differently than my fellow board members. I know that there's discussion that there were prior building permits in the past, but they were never acted on and they did expire. And so, definitively this placing the hot tub where it is was done without the benefit of a building permit. And then secondly, the double setback rule in town, the code, is really there for, I think, a very special reason, which is to, prevent potential disturbance to the neighbors. And I think that's a very important standard to uphold. The whole purpose of it is to reduce detriment to nearby properties. And secondly, there is 900 square feet of decking. I think that's the number we came up with. And looking at the decking relative to the property line, there would be adequate space on other parts of that deck where the variance would not be needed, and it could be placed in a conforming location. And so I would therefore deny granting this, this variance to allow it to remain within the double setback required.
Thank you. I think there's some applications where you see uniqueness, and this one is kind of a unique one that we haven't seen before. And that has to do, I think the uniqueness is I don't think it's an intended error. I think it's an innocent error here.
Yep.
And I think that it's not even a defiant thing. I think they thought they had approval to put this thing there. I think the setbacks changed at some point. They were granted a permit to put it in that very location. I can see it here. And I think the uniqueness of this application lends for its approval. It's not something you see every day. It's not something that I think if you can prove uniqueness, I think it's not something that will set a precedent. And that's the important part of this application. I agree with Member Mehring that you have a double setback. But in this case, we're the zoning board of relief, and in the uniqueness of this application, I think it's worthy granting this variance. Okay, council, you good? All right, we're going to other decisions. We have Stewart at 56 3 Mile Harbor Drive in East Hampton, modification of a 2015 determination. Morgan?
Yes.
What is this?
A modification. This one's interesting. We looked at this,
Yeah,
but it's kind of an interesting one.
What's your name? Stuart?
Okay. Good evening, board. So the original building approval for this was for the swimming pool and associated patio. There's 3 variances granted in 2015. I actually also have the approved survey for that. There's a very slight discrepancy, which is the reason for this modification. The original approval was for a variance to the pool, and it excluded the coping of the pool. So technically, there's supposed to be an additional variance for this application that was not technically granted in the determination. And I believe that they just went to the building department to get their CO, and the building department referred them to the zoning board to apply for modification to get that additional variance just for the pool coping, which is on the east side of the pool. It's technically 18.8 feet from the property line where it should be 20. The pool is still 20 feet from the property line, but that was just an additional variance that was not in the original determination. So it's more of just a slight discrepancy in the approval more than anything.
And actually, we dug into this in the pre-meeting. As we look closely at it, the application was given, the survey was given the variances to the water line of the pool.
Mm-hmm.
That has not changed in this application. So really, there is no change in this survey.
Yeah, it was built as approved.
Right.
It was more just a
It's built
discrepancy
as
in the
designed.
relief.
Yes.
As the survey, the zoning board determination, the variances were to the water line of the pool. It did not count in the coping around the pool, but nothing has changed.
Okay.
It's exactly where it was.
Yep. So the variance is needed for the 10.2 feet, the 13.5 feet, and the 15 feet were granted. And this was, to the actual swimming pool itself is 20 feet. So they didn't technically need a variance for the swimming pool, but for the coping, it did need a variance, which, because, it's like masonry. So I guess it's considered like a part of the patio.
My feeling is this is one of those modifications we should grant.
I agree.
I think because the zoning board originally, in their decision, they were giving a variance to the setbacks already. And so this is basically in keeping with, I think, the intent of that decision. So I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I'm
And
okay with
also-
it too.
I was saying also they constructed what they had proposed to construct. So
Right.
it's not like we're
There's no
looking at it being a foot
different-
off from the
yeah,
original construction.
exactly.
Yeah, I'm willing to approve it.
Okay, should we make a motion on that?
Sure. Was that
Therefore, in the matter of Stewart, 56 3 Mile Harbor Drive in East Hampton, Suffolk, tax number 300-150-5-10.2, to approve the modification.
Second.
Concur.
I concur.
Concur.
Do we have to make a motion on that, or do you have to draft up the modification and then we make a motion?
Good question, because I've been doing it both ways, trying to figure
You
this
still
out.
have to draft
I
it
think-
up.
I think on the modifications, I draft them and then you make the motion and adopt it once I draft it. On the extension of time, you make the motion.
It
and-
doesn't matter what we
It doesn't
just did,
matter.
Right, okay,
It's okay, but I will probably,
yeah,
Motion.
yeah,
next week, we're going to have a lot of determinations and you're going to be making a lot of motions to adopt them all,
yeah.
right? And I include the modifications. Yes. In the extension of time, when we get to that, when you're going to vote and then I just do them and you
That's
don't
correct.
see that again.
Right.
Okay, next is SEAAA at LLC at 230 Old Montauk Highway, Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-87-3-9. And this is a modification, and board members will remember this one. Let's see it, right? You remember this one? Before, Morgan.
So the original approval was just an NRSP to demolish a residence and construct a new residence that was approximately 5,300 square feet. It was a two-story house with a pool, sauna, patios, and other associated accessory structures. This permit was previously modified in 2023 to slightly shift some structures with no decrease in the bluff crest setback. And this modification is to change from a slab foundation to a full basement foundation. There's no increase in the area of disturbance. Construction has not been initiated yet. There's just been some clearing on the property, but they haven't broke ground yet. A building permit has been issued though. The new basement is proposed to contain an electrical closet, storage, laundry, and mechanical space. So according to the plans, it's not proposed to be like a finished basement with like a recreational room. There's no increase in bedrooms or bathrooms. And that's kind of it. So if there's any questions, I could try to answer them.
Can you just restate what the actual modification they're
It's
asking for?
so the original approval was for a slab foundation and the modification is to now have a full basement foundation.
Can we clarify if that basement is going to be unfinished or finished?
It just lists some mechanical rooms, a laundry room. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can get a better idea. This is, okay. No change to existing. I'm referencing Tyler's. Oh, this is, so that what we're looking at here is the first level floor. And then the basement outline is just basically the entire footprint of the residence.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Morgan. Is it the whole footprint of the house?
Except for the, this is like the pool area. So this is the footprint of the house and the red is the proposed.
So they're not going beyond the footprint of the house?
No, they are not going beyond the footprint of the house.
How deep is it?
Let's see if there's a slide view.
So it's like.
Okay, so this is a better view of like what the actual basement is going to look like. So this is the first story, and then it goes down. These are the new basement stairs, and then it's a mechanical room, a laundry room, storage. There's no height measurements on here, but we can estimate.
There's like,
It is going to be like a full height ceiling, I believe.
sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Full height.
Like it's not a crawl space. It's like there's
full
going to be
Full height.
full height ceiling.
I'm sorry, how big is the footprint of the house? I know the whole house is 53. I wasn't on the board when
The
this was.
surveys, because I feel like the aerial of that will be a little bit more straightforward about the footprint than the plans. So the proposed house is right here.
You know, I don't know, I kind of remember the hearing. I don't even think we discussed the extent of a basement, but, because you're,
It's going to be on a slab.
well, it's good, it's a point. I'm not going to deny that. Is there a material impact on this modification? That's the question.
The planning department does not anticipate any additional environmental impacts from the basement foundation than from what's already, going on the property with that's. the
Obviously, there's
associated
no
residence.
variances requested.
Yeah, there's
or
no
anything like
variances
that.
requested. It's just a different type of foundation.
It's a matter that needs to come back to us. That's the question.
Mhm.
Is there any consideration on our part for the discussion the town has been having over these potential 3-story areas that we should condition that that space can't be developed
You
into
can't really,
3 more bay?
I think that's still ongoing.
really impose
Where they didn't.
anything
Okay.
like that now,
No.
because nothing's changed.
That would come back to the building department to approve
Right.
any of the future changes and then send it back to us.
They're also not proposing to finish the basement, which I believe that
Yeah, I know.
proposed
Why did
legislation
they
was for
need it?
finish.
What was that last thing you said?
Not
I'm sorry.
proposing a finished basement.
I think if we can condition it as far as it remains an unfinished basement, it's not
Yeah.
intended for a finished basement.
That's fine.
Because that would increase the intensity of the use, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Can I just ask one thing about I know what you're saying, the planning department is saying there's no environmental detriment from them, but I wasn't on the board. I know there were a whole series of these applications along Old Montauk Highway in this area, so I don't understand the topography as much, but I mean, it's excavating a significant greater amount of, this is on a bluff? Is this on a?
We discussed that we discussed that in length at the hearing. The bigger discussion was the demolition of the house, the having more impact that I
Right.
think this excavation was, if you remember, right? That was a big discussion.
Yeah,
And I think
this was a complicated, because it was 2 houses.
I remember this
230,
application, but
So,
And this
were
also,
new
this
fairly
lot
new
was,
houses,
was proposed to be a staging area for 234, so we had a minimum disturbance to the highway. Now that 234 is along, I'm guessing here.
yes.
They want to start work on 230.
Good.
Yeah.
And we had 234 in
So
front of
right
us
now,
not too
this
long
is
ago
not-
for a pool modification, for a pool approval.
Additional disturbance.
I feel it's not necessary to come back to us on this. That's my feeling, but I don't know what the rest of the board do. Let me hear what you weigh in on.
As long as we can condition it as being unfinished
Unfinished,
space,
I agree.
I'm willing to go along with approving.
Right?
I am too, as long as it remains unfinished.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
So that's good for utilities and whatever minor things we allow in basements.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm okay with it. I still don't think you can say there's no environmental impact from excavating that much of this parcel, but I'll go along with it. As long as, I mean, it is what it is, so.
Okay. Again, no motion necessary or? No. Next, we have Gregory at 15 Shore Road, Amagansett. Suffolk tax map number 300-131-6-16. It's a modification of a 2022 determination.
Okay. So the original approval was an NRSP to construct 730 square feet of additions, a roof deck, an outdoor shower, and to upgrade the sanitary system. And to clear vegetation. It's in NRSP jurisdiction because there is beach vegetation present on the property. It's not within jurisdiction of wetlands. This modification is for an existing second outdoor shower that is on a second story of the residence on a second floor deck. It does comply with pyramid, and it likely does not have any additional environmental impact. And there's pictures of it. The survey says that it's proposed, but I believe it's an existing one because there are photographs of it. Again, the planning department doesn't see any issue with it with regard to environmental impact. Is there any questions that the board has about it?
So that's it, it's already there.
Mm-hmm.
They built it already?
Yeah, it's as-built. I think that they're just trying to get their CO.
Wait, I'm sorry, they built the second shower without it being part of the approved application?
Correct. So they're in for a modification.
Yeah, that's, yeah,
No, I thought it was a modification to allow them to build it, sorry.
There it is.
And this whole second shower thing seems to be becoming a trend
now,
suddenly.
isn't
This is like our,
Morgan, again, can you just clarify, did you say it does not require or does require pyramid variance?
It does not require any variances. It meets pyramid. I believe Tyler put some dimensions in the memo. I think it's a couple of inches, like it's a couple inches below pyramid, so it's close, but it does meet pyramid.
It's 73 inches in height, and
Right.
pyramid would be above
77.
77.3.
That's why we have the,
I mean, I wasn't on the board for this application, but I remember watching it, and I feel like the board worked very, very hard on this application. So I'm surprised that something comes in built that wasn't part of the application and approved, but I mean, it doesn't need a variance.
Well, the whole project didn't need a variance on this one.
We need an NRSP, yeah.
Get used-
I mean,
I think we would have granted it.
yeah, that's the
Probably would have
question.
granted
If it
it.
was a public hearing, would you grant it?
Yep.
Okay.
Where's the other shower? I'm just curious.
Zoom in on it. I think it's on the first story. It's right here,
Okay.
It's over there.
right here.
Becoming the new thing.
We okay with
I
it?
don't have a problem with that.
I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask for a hearing for
I'm
this.
okay
No,
with
not
it.
that, yeah. Okay.
All right, so we have extensions of times.
Don't we have-
Most of these extension of times are all very recent. I don't think if they, within the last year or two, except for the last one, but I don't think we need Morgan to opine if there's a year or two, right? So let's just go through it.
Sure.
Smith at 586 Montauk Highway, Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-47-1-1.1. It's an extension of a 2021 determination. Can we have a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion that in the application of Smith at 586 Montauk Highway, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-47-1-1. .1? Yeah, .1. I'd like to make a motion to approve the extension of time.
Second.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you. Next, we have 32 Star Island Associates at LLC at 32 Star Island Road, Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-6-4-9, 10, and 16.1. Can I have a motion?
Yeah, that was mine too. Then in the case of 32 Star Island Associates LLC, 32 Star Island Road, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-8-4-9, 10, and 16.1. I'd like to make a motion to approve the extension of time.
Second.
Concur.
I'll concur.
Concur. Next, we have Gordon, 134 Underwood Drive in Springs, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-39-9-14. Can I have a motion?
In the matter of the application of Gordon, 134 Underwood Drive in Springs, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-39-9-14, I make a motion that we approve the extension of time.
I'll second it.
Concur.
Concur. Next, we have Langen at 1843 Montauk Highway, Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-131-1-1. Can I have a motion?
In the matter of Langen, 1843 Montauk Highway, Amagansett, tax map number 3-131-1-1, make a motion to approve the extension of the 2021 determination.
Second.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. Next, we have Jocelyn Lyons Head LLC at 154 Isle of Wight Road in Springs, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-23-1-32, an extension of a 2011 determination. Now, board members, this is a determination, especially when it comes to NRSP or coastal areas. We like to say, are there any conditions that have changed, right?
Mhm.
So I think we asked the planning board, Morgan, I think you can just opine on this.
So
Yeah, I want to understand this one.
what's this modified mean? That's on,
Where is it modified? Where is the word modified?
it says modified in the memo from Tyler,
Oh, we have that memo.
Yeah.
but it's an extension of time?
Well, it says modification
Says it
request, but wait a minute, let me
Well,
just
it
read the
says
memo.
it's requesting an extension of time. Let's read it.
We're just approving an extension of time here, not a modification.
Yeah, it's just a copy and paste mistake, because the parcel before the board is requesting.
Oh.
It also says that the two property, parcel is still vacant.
Now, and Tyler did say in the pre-meeting that there was no changes.
Yeah, I think that's a typo. The modification in the title, I think that's a typo.
Mm-hmm.
Typo.
Yeah, that's a typo. So do we need a motion?
Yes,
So
we
there
need a
were no
motion.
On the matter of the
environmental changes at all?
Right, that's right.
Okay, I don't want to go by what you printed.
Oh,
What?
I want to hear it.
I'm sorry, yeah, that's fine.
In
That's
the
fine.
matter of the application of Jocelyn Lions Head LLC, 154 Isle of Wight Road in Springs, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-23-1-32. I make a motion to approve this extension of time.
I'll second it.
I concur.
concur.
Concur, thank you.
Can I just check the Suffolk County tax map on number on Langen? Just because it looks funky here, so I don't know, Jameson, if that needs to be checked for the
I
record.
think it's,
I think it's
the
300.
Okay, there it is, right.
300.
Yeah, do I need to redo
131.11 is
the,
what it should be.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't need to redo
So
the.
the three is, the
the
first three
motion.
is
Okay.
out. Right.
Okay.
And we have draft minutes of June 25th.
Oh,
Minutes.
you know, I neglected to look at them.
Let's put them off till
Table
next
that
week.
for next
Yes.
week? Okay.
I'm sorry.
We have no resolutions, and now we can ask our vice chair.
Adjourn.
Agenda.
Vice chair, do the
I'd like
honors.
to make a motion to adjourn the zoning board of appeals meeting on July 9th, 2024 at 9:30 PM.
I'll second it.
Concur.
I concur.